committee as well. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. With me this evening for select board, we have David Quill, Randy Iser, myself, Molly Keegan, Jane Nevin-Smith, and Amy Parsons. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, signed by the governor on February 15th of the same year, I announce that this meeting of the select board is being recorded by Hadley Media, the select board's office via Zoom, and ask if there is anyone present who is also recording the meeting. Jennifer, please, appears no one else is recording the meeting. Let the minutes reflect that no one has indicated they are doing so. And Amy, do you want to?
I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Tonight it's myself, Amy Fiden, Peter Matusco, Paul Benjamin, and Cheryl Abdul-Parmar, and Andy Kopacki may be joining us just in a little bit. I'm not sure if he'll be here or on Zoom.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see Mary there, so I am going to go ahead with our board meeting. Okay, so first on the agenda, we have a discussion of the enterprise funds, specifically water and sewer, I think, are being highlighted. And when they do, or
Sure. We have set, yeah, and we have the budget. Last week, or last time that we met, we went through the budget. It was just the general fund budget. It was the general fund budget, and we put off the enterprise fund budgets because we were still working on a few things. And we are ready on those tonight. There are actually three enterprise funds: the sewer, the water, and the cable. The Hadley Media, so we will touch on that one too, briefly. So when we get the budget up on,
It's coming right now.
just got in. When we get the PowerPoint on, I will have a section go over, and then Susan will be following this. What we're going to start with, and this will be the slide, but I can just say that what we're going to start with always is that where we are with our reserve funds with those three. That is the enterprise equivalent of our free cash and general fund. It's how much we have available to apply the budgets or to apply to capital or other needs. All three of the enterprise funds have been going down regularly over the last few years. And there'll be some, I'll have an explanation of what's going on with some of those. Our sewer reserves is probably in the most critical situation. The balance, we were certified last summer at 114,000, needed some to get through the fall town meeting, and we are now left with $27,771. So we'll talk about that. The water enterprise fund has the healthiest balance of the three. It was certified last summer at 981,210. After fall town meeting, we were left with 812,279. That is the balance that we have to go into the annual town meeting. It sounds like a lot, but one very important use that we have for this coming up will be getting us through the first year of borrowing for the water tanks. If and when we get to that percent. Okay. Okay, there we are with the showing on the screen now are the balances that I've just talked about. So water, if we do borrow for the water tanks soon, we are probably going to have an overlap year before it steps in and takes over where the Callahan Wells borrowing has dropped out. So we're going to need a good chunk of money in the water tanks. I mean, in the reserves at that point. And the cable, we had 100,000 last summer. We're down to 191,525 after special town meeting. And whatever we use out of the reserves is, unlike the other two funds, we do not replenish the reserves. The cable fund, we just get the one check a year from the cable company and from Charter. And it's generally $75,000, and that's not enough even to cover the budget. So we have regularly using the cable money. So to step into review over the last few years to see what's happening in sewer. This goes back to 22, and the top line is the revenues and what's been happening with revenues. We were just over $1 million in 22. You can see in 23, it actually dropped. We got back up a little, nice healthy jump there in 24, but less of a leap predicted for 25. And we're hoping for more coming in 26 because of the recent increases in the rates. The expenditures are the next sections for each year. They're broken down between the amounts we spend on the actual operational budget, which includes debt and interest, and then the chargebacks, which is the amount that comes back to the town. So the third line and the highlighted line or the bolded line in total expenditures and the amount that we were spent in the first 3 years and what's voted for this year and projected for next year. Down below that, you see the difference between the revenues and the expenditures. So that's what we call the budget shortfall. This is not ever what we intend when we start the year. We try to get our budgets as close as we can within the revenues. The revenues drop though, and our expenditures continue, and we therefore have more of an increase, especially if you look at 23. With the drop in the revenues that year, the budget still chugged along. There were a few things that were able to be kept back, but 223,000 was used out of reserves that year just to get through. 24, we were a little closer. 25, we started going the other way again, where we spent the year intending to use 138,000 just to cover the expenses that were needed in the sewer. And this is where we are now, the 2 blue years. The first column is what was requested, and then the second column is what was recommended. I use recommended loosely. Recommended means what does it have to be to stay within the revenues that are projected. And as I mentioned before, we're not even sure we're going to get all those revenues in depending on usage. And this is where Susan and Scott are going to step in and make some more explanation afterwards. But I just wanted you to see the trends that are there, the difficulty that we have with the enterprise funds that we don't necessarily have with the general funds.
Talk about the chargebacks.
The chargebacks are the portions that are town hall, mostly is town hall. It covers the overhead, much of the overhead for the enterprise funds. They make use of select board office, the town administrator, the collector, the treasurer, the accountant, that a lot of they make use of services. They have expenses.
Health insurance.
Health insurance, that's right, their share of health insurance and retirement. That's right, the benefits, those are the indirect parts. They were back in 22, it was just under 200,000. You can see we're really not climbing at much of a rate. There are probably things we could do to charge more, but that wouldn't help either of us at this point. We are using the same formulas. It is up to, well, where am I up to now? 203,000 is projected for 26. It's probably going to go up for 27 because of the increases in salaries. There always a 2-year lag here because we have to use some solid figures for projecting 26. We use 2024 figures because that's the last year that we have a full year of expenses to work with.
Where does that other number show? Does it show in revenues? I mean,
It does show in the, on the town side, it is revenue to us. Yes.
is it, so
As a general-
it's in the list? What?
Yes, it is.
What would it be under? Is it under?
It is,
I just tried to look and I wasn't sure what it was called.
it is,
It's in there.
enterprise chargebacks.
Oh,
And they are, is probably the second one on the revenues, just above transfers.
Oh, okay.
So the only other thing I want to point out here is the last column I've sort of dedicated to how much did we cut from the request. We had to cut almost $300,000 of what was requested. And again, Scott will go into what that means for his budget. We had no choice if we need to stay within the revenues and the reserves that we have available. Sewer department has certain, we have certain requirements of what we have to provide to run that department. If we have, if we are able to stay within that budget and we get those revenues, we will squeak through 26. So That's what we will be bringing before you. I'll move on to water and go through that a little more quickly because it's exactly the same kind of information. The top line are the revenues that you see in the years of actual. That's based on usage, which is generally comes in a little bit lower than what has been projected. We don't know where we're going to come in 25 yet, and we have projections for 26 based on the rate increases. Again, we have the budget and the chargebacks for total expenditures, which are going up each year. What is requested, and then you can see the budget shortfall below there. So we're doing better in water than we are in sewer, but we did make the attempt this year to stay within the actual revenues and not to use reserves if we can help it, because again, we're going to need that for the tanks, at least for the first year. So the amount was requested for the budget was 1,817,598. We cut 232,550 out of that to keep it within the projected revenues of 1,585,277.
Linda, can I just ask you, just looking at FY 23,
Yes.
so there was a budget shortfall that year of 103,000.
Oh, yes.
But we didn't use any of
Wait.
the reserves.
Yeah, we would have been that same 103. Yeah, this is
Okay,
a
okay.
case of where I went back for these purposes tonight. I went back a bit further and didn't necessarily pick up everything, but good point that we would have. Wait a minute. Yes, we would have had to use the budget shortfall. Yes, it would have been the same amount, 103,000 used that year. And the year before, it looks like we had a small surplus, so that is appropriately zero. But yeah, 23 should have been 103,000. Yeah.
I'm still having a problem with the chart. We have a budget.
Yeah.
We know we're gonna have these expenses. Why isn't that in the budget?
Oh, boy. It's not in the budget because,
Balance out.
yeah,
I will play the show.
and yes, and it's set out separately because we have to call it revenue on the town side. So it's an expense to the water department, but it's revenue here. And so we want to show that those two figures are the same. If we, what are we doing on here? If we,
It's function of the enterprise, because enterprise has to be handled totally separately.
Yes.
So it's function of that, because services come from the town side. It's no different than, fuel or electricity. It's an allocation. Exactly,
right,
exactly.
it needs to be set out separately.
If we have a budget, why are we talking about something added to the budget when it's not part of it?
Because it still has to be covered by the revenues. The water and sewer revenues.
So you're saying
It's-
it's one of those costs, it's not in the budget, but it's an expense.
It is an expense
Okay.
and it's,
So why
and-
aren't we showing the electricity budget for all of this? It's an expense.
well, it might be, because,
Well, we're also
Does-
2 years behind. We have
Right.
audited figures.
but the DPW uses its own, yeah, we do have some of that level. It is in the chargebacks, electricity and overhead and postage. They come up and use the postage meter. So those are.
You send a lot of bills, so I assume it's more.
Right, right. Yeah, there are direct expenses that are in the chargebacks, and the direct expenses are proportionate amounts of people's salaries and actual expenses. What we do is we compare the expense of that department against the expenses of all departments. And whatever that ratio is, that's the percentage that they charge of these other areas. And then the other is the indirect, also included our indirect expenses, which is retirement, OPEB. And so, yeah, so various retirement, OPEB and insurance system. And yes, this is the way that we need to do it. We've had a little bit of a few years ago, we had a little back and forth with DOR about how we were presenting it. So this is the way, this is the way it is.
We had a lot of back.
Yeah, we did have a lot of back and forth.
Yes.
We knew what we were doing, but so hopefully it's more understandable to them, even if it isn't to us. So, and this is the Hadley Media budget. I always feel like they get a little short shrift. they are their own enterprise fund. And you see that again, the top line is the revenues. That is exclusively the check that we receive from charter each year. And you can see it, we really have been pretty even at the 71, 75, 74 is what we received. Some good news, and just this week, the projected 74,773, it actually came in at 85,000. So we have 10,000 more to deal with. And we probably then can use it as a projection into 26, but that's not going to solve the problem. Because if you look down at the expenditures bottom line, we look good in 22, but then as the department grows and expenses grow, they no longer cover it. And yes, I see in 23, we made that, I have that same slip up, Molly, that I did show the 18 coming out of reserves, but it should be the same as how it's set up in 24 and 25. This year, we're looking at 65,000 in the requested budget. That would have been the shortfall, bringing it back, and that's impossible to bring back under the $75,000 income. But so we do have to use reserves. Even in bringing that, even in cutting that budget by 27,000, we're still going to need to use the reserves. So, but maybe $10,000 less now because because of the recent negotiated increases. So, so that might give it life a little more. So that is the end of what I'm showing you in the budgets, and going back really to bring the focus on water and sewer. I'm going to turn it over to Susan in the next PowerPoint, and we'll see if we can make some sense out of and a plan out of what's going on in sewer.
Okay, so the factors considered in rate need for both enterprise funds. Rising expenses, fuel, electricity to virtually anything the DPW purchases. Have seen double-digit increases. Sewer alone, their sludge costs have increased over 300% in the last 5 years. Which is why I've come to you folks a couple of times in the last 5 years for rate increases. Aging infrastructure, discussion of aging infrastructure has been had and ongoing since I was elected in 2006 and probably for 100 years before that as well. What brought this all to light is a meeting that we had with Ty and Bond regarding planned infrastructure asset management plan. Thank you, Scott. Which they're looking at about $2 million worth of repairs and upgrades to our infrastructure that we are not prepared to be able to fund. And Ty and Bond had they were predicating their timeline based on us having 300,000 in reserves for sewer. And lo and behold, we have 27,000 in reserves. And they've offered to do a rate study for us, but I think we can pretty much do a pure rate study here. And granted, there will be a lot of discussion about it because the rate need is large. Rising interest rates, something else that is out of our control. However, we all know that borrowing money now is more expensive than it was in the past. Before I speak to the usage factor, I wanted to explain how I've been asked to approach any kind of a rate increase previously. I've been given a dollar figure and tell me what the percentage increase would be to be able to get there. And as you folks know, we have all kinds of tiers and that type of thing. And so it was really kind of an arbitrary application of percentages. Whereas the last part here, usage, is a much better way to do that. It's our one variable that's unknown. So what I've done is I went through usage reports for the past 5 years. Well, let me get you first to some conditions that we're having in the Pioneer Valley, which are really climate related. So with usage, the one thing we can't control is the weather. We now have, and I did some research on this. We now frequently in the valley experience what are called flash droughts. They're periods of extreme dry after extreme rain and precipitation. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball on this because during periods of extreme precipitation, our usage is low because nobody is watering outside or washing cars or doing whatever they do when it rains. And when it's extreme drought, the state imposes restrictions. So, you know, we always used to go, geez, it'd be nice to get a drought. We could increase our revenues. No more. So the first thing I did was took a look at, well, and here is an example of how quickly this changes. The drought map on the left was from January 1st, and we were in significant drought. And the one on the right, we are now in level 3 critical drought. To me, it doesn't seem like it, but I am not the mass expert, so there you go. As far as the rate need, I started with determining the budget need. Instead of using Linda's reduced cost or reduced budget, what I've done is I've put in Scott's ask. Scott has indicated to us that it was his bare bones budget. And there was some concern with the 200 and almost 300,000 less that he'd be able to make it through all of 26. So I put in his ask. I added in the administrative chargebacks. I've reduced by other revenues and investment income that are provided to us in the A2 from the DOR. And then I added in the amount of debt service for a 2 million borrowing for the infrastructure that needs to be handled sooner rather than later so that we don't have system failure. That comes up with the 1,608,973 for his total operating expenses for 26. Then I took a look at the 5-year average annual usage. So, you know, we have these big swings, and these are in cubic feet. So, you know, if we do a percentage increase here, and we go, okay, so we'll do 20%. Well, look at what happened from 21 to 22. You know, there was a $3 million cubic foot decrease. So we saw nothing. You know, we've seen these ups and downs where it doesn't make sense to continue picking a percentage out of the air. I totaled those, divided by 5 to come up with an average annual usage of 128. Well, actually, it'd be 12,817,060, but I divided that by 100 because we charge per 100 cubic feet. Our pure rate need then becomes $12.55 per 100 cubic feet per sewer.
We are at.
Well, we have tiers. For residential, we are at $8.87. For commercial sewer basic, we're at $9.10, and for sewer conservation commercial, we're at $10.16. So, you know, we're looking at about a 28% increase in sewer.
One of the things that we were hoping to do, obviously, certainly not expecting to make a decision on this tonight. We want to give a fair overview and potentially bring this back to the next select board meeting, because we'd like to have some discussions about those tiers. It's a minor administrative changes to them. How we collect, what we collect, very confusing. Some of them. Use Scott's term, we're losing money on because we're not catching different businesses the way that we should. So we'll add that to the next meeting.
Well,
Rates are the rates, but.
right, whether we do tiers at all. You know, I don't know of any other towns that really do tiers. It was you know, I remember when they put in the tiers, Joe Lanzapami was here as our water resource coordinator in 2006. And he did all these feel-good tiers, you know, let's make sure that, you know, the single person alone isn't, you know, getting whacked. And, you know, there were all these tiers, but the fact of the matter is the first gallon out of the ground is the most expensive. You know what I mean? So, I think you dilute any rate need when you have all these tiers.
Well, it seems to me that we have a uniform tax base. We're not doing tiered taxes for commercial.
Right.
Going to a single rate would make calculations much more easy.
At the end of the day, you have to make sure that the town's not getting wrong.
Yes.
Right.
It's what we have been getting for quite some time. So we've got to figure out how to reverse the trend.
But again, so what has happened in the past is I've come in front of the select board and I say, there's a 35% rate need right now. And what I've been told was they're not going to do a 35% rate increase. So do 20, 10, and 5. So we do a 20% rate increase. Okay, so, you know, that year we didn't have as much usage, so it's a little bit lower. So, but we're already behind the 8 ball by 15%. So when you go on to the next year, well, there's your 25% rate aid. And it just continues to get further and further apart. So, and here we are. And here we are, yes.
Scott, what percentage of sewer
I'd have to get those numbers from Peter, but I would say
birds?
Almost 60, well, I figured about 63% is commercial. So, you know, there's small outliers, but about 63% is commercial.
I think, David, I'm not sure if that's getting at, but I think there are probably ways to structure the tiers.
Or do a residential and commercial. One of the things that I did, you know, I was trying to figure out how to do this so that it was equitable to everybody involved. And I thought, okay, so we roll agricultural and municipal into residential, and then we leave commercial. Now, commercial would see less of an impact, a percentage increase wise. And, you know, we're just going to get hung by the residential, but the numbers are the numbers. So. Okay, so this is for us to percolate. Yeah. And we're going to. Yep. So, well, let's go on to water.
So before we go on to water.
Sure.
I have a question. You talk about Time Bond saying we need $2 million for them to repair it, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a timeline that they suggest? Do we start on this tomorrow and get it done in a year, or how does that work?
They thought we were ready to go with this.
So they say.
Exactly.
So they're suggesting we do this now, and then did they have any idea how long it would take?
I think they kind of
Suggesting?
went, you have no money, you
Yeah.
can't do anything.
When they saw the reserves, they planned it for everybody.
Yeah.
They're not ready. So essentially, they gave us the information and then said, go talk and figure this out.
But if we were ready today, how long do they anticipate taking to spend this $2 million?
No, yeah.
Actually, it's probably in the presentation that they did because it went out over their chart. And I mean, I want to say that 2 million
There,
was probably 4 years. or something.
the projects they're discussing. In order to put it into context, looks a lot like, what our capital plan is. Like, there's a lot of different types of projects that you can get, done, so they space it out, really, including borrowing, things like that, so there's not like there's no measure to say, like, we're gonna start this time, we're gonna finish this, and there's space here. So.
So this is a problem I'm hearing, because when we were building our new building, we said we must start at the beginning, set up a third maintenance. Okay, for these buildings, so that what's happening, the old buildings doesn't happen. That's not happening. We don't have deferred maintenance for infrastructure. We need to get on the stick and get organized here and we could have a good financial place and it's fine. I think it's select board's fault. Fine, everybody here, everybody before us. For not being willing to bite the bullet and say, I'm sorry. Let me stand for some money.
And it does, and that's all it takes is money. Exactly.
Philosophy. The operational budget is essentially the same.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Does this rate increase? Because we're adding, essentially, we're thinking about adding $2 million in debt payment. Include building up the reserve at the same time. I'm sure you've already, I mean, in other words, we're not just gonna pay for that and then we're just gonna continue
again-
with this low reserves.
And again, our unknown variable still remains usage. But the hope is that,
But,
yes,
but it's essentially, if things stayed the way they were, our reserves would build up. And how, do we have a projection on when we could get to having $1 million, $1.5 million in reserves? Or what is is there a plan? Or is there a number that we'd like to get to maintain in reserves to protect the town against, you know, some catastrophic failure of a main pipeline or something? Is my.
I mean,
Essentially, Paul, we would have to calculate what you saw on the screen is to get us what we need to get the repairs done. In case it gets
Understood.
back to even.
Right.
We'll probably have to go back to the drawing board and do that.
So, yeah, and I get that. I guess what I'm saying is, if we're going to have a dramatic increase, should we include in the number, even if we have to go up another 5%, or 10%, to prevent us from staying in this underfunded,
the plateau.
to
Yeah.
stabilize the system. I mean, we got to get there.
I think that's
I mean,
something that
I
we should
think
look
it's,
at.
I'm shocked. I mean, it's incredible that we only have that kind of money left over, that we've been cannibalizing those reserves. And I don't think people understand, you know, the sewer system went down, Scott, for what, a day?
All you'd have.
Yeah.
Major problem.
Major problem. I don't think people really understand. This is not something we all look at, but you know, the next time you know, you have a stuffed up pipe in your house and it takes you a couple of days to get a plumber, think of that for a whole town. Okay, that might include a week of excavation, emergency, you know. So we should have reserves. And that's, you know, I'd rather, I mean, look, I'm on Route 9 with my buildings. We pay for sewer and water. You know, this is gonna affect my, you know, bottom line, but I really feel it's essential that we build up reserves to a proper level and protect the people of this town.
Well,
Right.
the people in this town expect to have services, and I don't think they give any thought to what actually happens to make those services. They just assume it'll happen. And they need to be told. For lost money. Talk about
Services, staffing levels.
We should have started a long time ago and didn't look about in here, but yeah.
Yeah, like. Federal service. We should have $1 per service. Oh, it's something.
What was the percentage of people, like, I know all the businesses are on sewer.
Mhm.
but not all of it. So what's
It's about 40%.
40% on the sewer.
What is the capacity that we're at with the sewer? With all these developments going on in divisions, do we have an idea of knowing? Are we jeopardizing of us because of adding projects to the town?
No, it's.
Or if we're, like, are we below the 80% threshold? saying,
Yes,
okay,
we
we're
are.
good. We just need maintenance and repairs.
And I gave those, you, Paul, you remember what those numbers were? And I gave them, or you were Shardul.
Yeah. we did
Well, we're
that.
underneath the
Yeah,
threshold.
we're
of saying,
under the
okay,
threshold.
we're not in
Well,
trouble.
well,
No, no,
Okay, good.
that's a good
Threshold.
question, but yeah, we are.
So it's just more of a maintenance thing.
Something.
So,
A lot of it, Peter, from the report is years of deferred maintenance, it's just work that was never done.
Yep.
And now
So
it's
that's-
starting to compound.
So that's kind of part of the problem, Scott, that you're right. The lease code show some of it. Right. The sites, are some of the sewer and stuff looks like we try to prioritize these things, but. You know, we're talking one or two jobs and it's out. So, got to attack it year by year as opposed to month by month. Because the funds just aren't. there. Some of these things you show, where, yeah, they might look right to the side of it. Some of these-
And Scott, I think part of the question we have kind of going to Peter's point, I think sometimes it's counterintuitive, but given the fact that we have some capacity, right? Bringing on additional, like some of the development projects that are being discussed that would tie into sewer. That means that they're revenue generating.
Correct.
So it's actually helping us
Yes.
to manage development coming in because it will contribute to the revenue.
And that's why, you know, in my statement to you that I support the development of the farmers. They're doing the housing project over there. That's revenue for us. You know, the BAB project, whatever, that's all revenue for us. I support that and we can take that sewage. The mathematics of it don't increase very much of our capacity.
That's compared to. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Never gonna get involved in areas in the development stuff, supposed to have been also. Expenses.
David's talking about people being upset because we're going to have to increase what I would consider substantially, but you made the point, if we had done this when we were supposed to over the years, we would all pay the same amount of money. It just would have been a long-term note instead of a short-term note.
exactly.
And it would have been smaller.
Right.
But we're here, again, we're here.
Mhm.
So moving forward, yeah, moving forward. Okay, so on the water. Water.
It's not as much. Okay, so again, you know, we did the same, I did the same exercise. The requested amount, the chargebacks, less other revenues. This also has a 3 million borrowing for the Mount Warner wells, which we had at town meeting a year ago. I mean, sorry,
Tanks,
water
yeah,
tanks, oops,
Yeah,
sorry.
still 168.
Yeah, it's still 168,000. For total operating expense of $1,840,344. And again, I did all of the usages and you know, you can see the swings here. And divided by 5, and our pure rate comes down to 689 per 100 cubic feet. Right now, residential is 498. And then there's all kinds of tiers for commercial. But if you went with essentially the commercial basic is 650. So they would see an increase, but yeah. Yeah, I think, well, about 24, yeah.
But what does that mean for my?
Well, I did for my household.
Okay.
So it would be $30 a quarter.
Big bad over here.
Yes, I do. But, yeah, it would be $30 a quarter and I'm on water and sewer.
And that would be for the sewer too, or just the water?
Well, no, for both.
For both.
I calculated my bill and my bill would go up $30.
We're just on water, since that's 60% of the residents.
I think they get, even if you're not, even if you have, you get that, right?
No.
No, you just get a water bill.
No, just one.
Because I'm, we just get water. Because we have a septic system. It's tight.
That'd be a lot more. I think we're
Well-
about 2/3.
Yeah, probably closer.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, any other questions for Sue Linda Scott about this topic? There's more to come.
Already.
The infrastructure fee, that's still there
That's still there.
and it's needed.
That's an ongoing.
Yes, yeah.
Right. All right, thank you. I'm just gonna beg indulgence for a moment. Mary Thayer, you're on still? Yep. See Mary.
She on TV.
Just remember, this is the laptop that connects, and I have two screens at the office. I just feel like I have to say that. Little touch.
Mary, are you there?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Mary, I know you were on a tight timeline, so do you have enough time to walk us through your article?
I do. Thank you so much for interrupting. I'm sorry
Are
to
you
interrupt your
muted, or
meeting.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? No. You can't hear me?
Mary, hold tight 1 second.
Okay.
Can you try again?
Can you hear me now? You can't,
Andy, can you hear us?
yes,
Can you
Can
talk?
you say something?
I'm talking. You can't hear me. I'll
I can hear
go.
you, Mary, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, you can hear me, Andy?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I don't think they have us turned up, so. Can you hear us?
Yeah,
I'll
we
keep
can't hear anybody
talking.
though when they're talking.
We're talking.
Hello.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay. Mary, Chief Mason's going to explain your article, and then
Okay.
maybe if you have to, you can text him if you need to correct.
He'll-
So, it was just a request, from the CPC committees. They have, appointees to the committee from historical, planning, conservation, finance, park and rec, and the housing. And sometimes some of those members aren't able to make it. But because of the way things are set up, they aren't able to have alternates go in that can actually have a voice in the meetings and take votes. So essentially, all they're asking is that the select board, who has appointed the other committees who have a member on CPC, to allow each one of those committees to take a vote for an official alternate who can discuss things and make an official vote at the CPC meeting. It's that simple. It doesn't strike me as anything out of the ordinary. Probably something we should be doing all the time, all of this.
Mary, is that what you wanted to say?
Yes.
There she is. Okay. All right, great.
Good timing.
Okay, is this something we need to think about, or something you want to make a motion?
Second.
Okay, motion made by David, seconded by Randy. Discussion?
Was there part of that that said they wanted to select board person on their committee or just the select board to make that decision?
We, the select board actually has appointees two already. So,
The select board created the CPA committee, I believe, so essentially with your commission of it. You allow a member from each one of those boards and all of these.
all right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, thank you, chief and deputy chief.
Yep.
Chief. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have fire and ambulance department pro forma financial discussion. Okay.
Thank you. First off, I just wanted to bring forward to you, no, that's fine. Just so you're aware, and we had a little emergency declaration that was put into place on Sunday. I gave the chair of the select board a call. So on Sunday, the town of Hadley DPW director reached out to me as a result of a failure of the emergency backup generator. Basically, the motor is blown. It was rebuilt 12 years ago. It's not something that you could foresee or project that was going to happen. They do regular maintenance on it. We actually have a contracted generator person. They came out. We just were dealing with a propane issue with it, which we corrected. That is the lifeline to the town's water supply. With the weather that was coming in and projected, we felt it was not reasonable not to get a backup generator into town and get a plan going on replacement or repair. I reached out to our Anchor Electric is our generator provider and maintenance person, and they are very comfortable with not a replacement because we're looking at over $500,000 to purchase a generator this size, along with a close to a year to build it. Instead, looking at a rebuild. So they've already torn the motor apart to start reviewing what's completely wrong with it. They're looking at parts where they're getting them. This happens to have been manufactured in Mexico. So the parts are coming out of Mexico. So they are working as hard as they can to get quotes and information on that. So being in contact with Scott, with Mike, and with Molly, we felt it was critical. So we have established a state of emergency for the town of Hadley. We did this in 2013 as well, as a result of the propane issue we were having. I've notified Mass Emergency Management, so this is on their board of the state, and they have provided us with some information if we find it necessary to take out a loan. Basically, the state of emergency opens up all the budgets to this. There's no procurement required, and basically opens up the entire department, all the department's budgets throughout the town to support it if needed. They did want to bring it to your attention that there is an option for a no interest, basically loan from the Department of Revenue if we submit this declaration to them. So that is an option after we receive what the total cost is going to be. So at the direction of the emergency management director, Molly Keegan as the chair is who I report to. I made the recommendation, so she has signed it that as of 1300 hours on Sunday, March 2nd, 2025, a state of emergency exists in the town of Hadley. And this will remain in effect until basically we remove the portable generator that has been installed there. Until that is removed off site, taken offline, we have our new generator, or our generator repaired. The emergency will then be rescinded. Anybody has any questions or comments?
No, I was glad to hear that last part. There is a temporary generator now.
We were very fortunate. The gentleman we have reached out to a vendor in New Hampshire. So Sunbelt was able to get one down here. This is not a small generator. This thing is large. So it's all been hooked in. And the gentlemen that work at the water plant have all been advised how to, handle any situations with it. And again, I can tell you this gentleman is also a Southampton firefighter. He's also in the military, and he knows these generators inside and out. He was the one that assisted us at the center station when our generator went down. So he's on this and he was really, really working hard for the town. So I thank him for that.
Thanks.
All right, back to the fun part. Or not. Anyway, thank you again. I do want to say a special thank you to Heidi Olmsted, my administrative assistant, and Deputy Chief Brian for helping with this. This has been a lot of work to give you basically an all-encompassing view of this. There's a lot for you to digest, so we put together a PowerPoint just to do an overview of it and give you give you folks some time to go through the document. We've looked at best practices. We've looked everywhere to get information that we provide to you, along with some pretty reasonable data that we have in-house now, looking at actions data and then also our initial having A1. So, yes.
Linda, you want to share the clicker?
That's what Aaron
Come on, go through the paperwork and I'll click with you. Okay.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah, it's all good. All right, so we were tasked with putting together a multi-track plan for you and the finance committee. So we have done that. And that we have given you best practices for a fire-based ALS system. I've reviewed similar data from communities around us. And it is important to note that the current fire department budget and the ambulance special revenue budget jointly cover the cost of 8 full-time firefighter EMTs, including their regular hours and overtime. Additionally, the full-time firefighter paramedic or EMS coordinator, who serves as a shift officer, is funded entirely through the ambulance budget. And the fire department's budget for FY26, you should have that as what has been presented from Linda. If not, I have some copies if you haven't seen it. So respectfully, I'm asking you all that both boards evaluate and determine what they consider an acceptable level of risk to the town of Hadley, given our ever expanding commercial and residential areas. It includes addressing the additional hazards and increased call volume that our public safety personnel are facing daily. And, you know, these challenges encompass emerging concerns and challenges such as new lightweight construction, solar arrays, battery storage, drug and mental health related calls, as well as growing populations of student housing in town. And of course, the future increases in senior housing and over 55 communities, which you were just talking about, sewer reserves. I urge you to consider these factors from a perspective of public safety officials. I wanted to make it a little bit personal as well. So I know that there's the philosophical side of it that Mike has presented. I want to tell you that I started as a call force firefighter in 1999 with no full-time staff here. I can tell you that the reason why this is such a passion to me is incidents that have occurred during my career that I don't want to have to see again. Probably the most damaging one to my brain is when I first joined the department, working as a carpenter, and my wife and I running the Bowers Market at the time, watching an 18-year-old slam head on into another car in front of our store in front of my son when he was 3, running over there and having one of our call force officers drive by me and say, "I'll be back as quick as I can," with a rescue truck because they were trapped in the car. And I unfortunately did not have the pleasure to watch that gentleman expire in front of me, along with his friend, who was basically stuck under the dashboard on the other side. So I asked myself, would that be different today with what we have for staffing? With the 206 Russell Street fire, which was my first major fire chief, would that fire be different today if we had a full-time fire department other than just the fire chief? Would that increased, that improved time frame, would that have made a difference? Our Huntington Road fire that we had where we had a fatality. So again, I know it's not our fault that we didn't have call force or our full-time staffing at that time. But that's been one of the missions of mine when I became full-time, to make sure that this kind of stuff is managed and mitigated as best as possible. So thank you for letting me share that with you. So the scope. Again, I put it in our annual report every year. I'm required to give you a report of the status, and thank you to the town of Hadley for increasing our staffing. But we're still at a critical need. Basically compliance with our current OSHA and NFPA standards. That's the requirement of the 2 in and 2 out rule. That is not a suggestion, that is actually a law. I've attached that in your documents, so you can actually read that. Also under our scope, we just want to let you know that we are looking to see how we can increase our cash revenues into the town by incorporating this ambulance service. And right now, we have our BLS bus that is doing second calls only. So I just want everybody to understand that we estimated 150 calls. If you look at the data, you're pretty close and right on the money with that. There's also data in this package for you to show that we had actually estimated about $750 per call when we did our, our spec of what we might bring in for that BLS bus. And we're pretty much spot on with that as well. Again, with additional staffing, there is the decrease of our overtime and training budgets potentially. There's the improvement of our overall responses to all incidents. We're going to have, if we staff up 4 firefighters on scene immediately to address a structure fire is huge. Right now, it's 2 firefighters that are on duty 24/7. Technically, they should stand there and wait until 2 additional firefighters show up, whether that be myself and the deputy, call force folks, or mutual aid. But that's not going to happen. We can't do that. But that's the liability that we're taking by doing this. Improve overall teamwork and morale. I can tell you that our team right now is 100% committed to this department. I know that we have a new union, and the town has been very, very generous to the union. And I know that they feel that, but I can tell you that they're concerned. They're concerned that you don't understand that if we eliminate the ambulance, or if we eliminate the ambulance budget, that's taking away pretty much half of the fire department. So this additional staffing will improve that overall teamwork and morale. I also wanted to, I've lived here for a long time now, and I hear the rumors. I hear that our firefighters are at the station and polishing trucks and, that kind of stuff. Well, yes, they are polishing trucks, but they're also going through every piece of equipment daily to make sure it's ready to go. They're cleaning the station. I wanted you to be aware that our members are responsible for the lawn upkeep at both stations. They mow both of the lawns. I'm sure you have seen what the cost is to just take care of one of our cemeteries. That's our department taking care of that. Our folks are taking care of snow removal at both stations, shoveling the sidewalks. That's what we're handling as well. So we're really working hard to make sure that we're constantly busy. Training, if our folks aren't doing something, they're usually on the computer, updating their medical credentials, or just taking additional classes that they want to. So there was questions about how this current full-time and paid on-call staffing works. So this is the list. This is what we have right now. So myself and the deputy, we're both basics. I have one captain EMT basic who's in charge of vehicle maintenance, and he's very busy. If he's not busy in my department, he's helping out at the DPW, or he will help out with PD if there's something small that he can handle at the station. We'll try and improve because the DPW has too much going on. I have one lieutenant paramedic who's our training officer. He is actually tonight going through hose operations and water deployment up at North Station, and has put together our training program so that we are meeting those requirements to make sure we're hitting those standards and requirements every year. I have one acting fire OIC paramedic. So this is the position that is funded completely currently out of the EMS budget. He's also the EMS coordinator. He is working feverishly on getting all the information and paperwork into the state for us to transition into our ALS service. I have one acting fire OIC paramedic and one firefighter paramedic, and then 4 firefighter EMT basics. And I neglected to put in there, one of them is our IT coordinator. Our IT coordinator makes my head spin. Mike has had the opportunity to sit down, Jennifer has. This gentleman is putting a plan together to bring in state grant funding to upgrade a lot of our our computer equipment, and is also working to try and actually assist the senior center with updates to the security systems and cameras to try and lower those costs, and actually do some of the installs in-house. We have our paid on-call side. We have 3 lieutenant EMTs and 2 lieutenant first responders, 5 firefighters and 7 firefighter first responders. So there's the totals for you. So the staffing structure, we are at full-time staffing. The groups are divided into 4 groups. It's a 24-hour rotation, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, and 5 days off. And shifts begin and at start at 7 a.m. and end at 7 a.m. The fire chief and myself, the deputy chief, we work a regular weekday administrative shift, but we're on call 24/7, obviously. Weekday hours include meetings, inspections, permits, plan reviews, fire drills, fire prevention, training, and fire safety education, in addition to responding to calls. The town of Hadley also, we continue to contract with Action EMS as its they're our primary provider for ALS, and their contract rate is now $180,000 a year. We have a lot of data in here for you. So there's information on our Action EMS data that we received from them. If you start, we have fiscal year 22, 23, and 24. 25 will come out 3 months after the end of the fiscal year. They do a 3-month look back because they will be billing out through June 30th. So you can see their net billing versus their cash collections. And FY22 was kind of our rebound from COVID. That's why you're seeing that lower number there. So that's the reason why you're seeing that 535,000. You can see the patient transports, and again, total call volume, Action ambulance only, and then all total call vol, including mutual aid and HFD. Those are the totals for that, and then the percentages of increases. So we are definitely a busy department for what we have for staffing. And our FY25 numbers are not showing any signs of. Here's our revenue projections for Hadley A1 and A2. So I know I did watch the last select board meeting, and I know that we've seen approximately $90,000 in revenue. And I understand that, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that that's for second calls only. That's for when Action EMS is out and we are available to actually respond. So we were asked to have Hadley send our information to Action EMS. So Action EMS took our data. So the call volume that you see, the 821 transports, is basically their volume plus our additional volume for Hadley A1. They put it into their system and gave us some projections on what our revenues would be. What I'd like to remind everybody is that this does not include any mutual aid calls to the town of Amherst, which is now in place. So we are looking at an average, according to the chief of Amherst, a potential additional 150 calls per year. And that's just Amherst. Northampton, Sunderland, our communities around us, we are all strained on the EMS side, as you're aware, are all waiting for our ALS system to go in service so that we can assist, just like they assist us. So there's some pretty great data for you as far as the average revenue per transport for an ALS versus a BLS, and that's pretty much spot on of what we had recommended for when we started the BLS system.
This number right here, the 7. Can you go back, please? Thank you. Now that 780, that's ALS or B?
That is a combination of both.
That's a combination of both revenues.
Correct.
Both.
Because they added in our BLS revenues, which some of them were ALS because we may have requested an intercept for ALS. So if we go out to a call and our basic firefighter EMTs determine that it's an ALS call, we call for an intercept from Northampton or Amherst. They get onto our truck and then we bill up to the ALS level.
When it comes to third-party billing, just a off question. If it costs to transport someone to the hospital, say it's $1,000, and we hire somebody third party, when it comes to the billing for the insurance companies, how is it when it comes to are there people that default on those payments that we might be guesstimating that it's $1,000 for a bus ride, but that, you know, insurance company, they increase their rates so they can get a percentage of really what they really are asking for. How much of those numbers really are defaulted and not paying? You know, I mean, I'm sure that that number might be cut. There's always that option, you know, just thinking of that. And if we're going out of town to saying assisting Amherst, is there a different rate because we're assisting another town? Or is it still the same rate for assisting?
Action would, so for right now, because Action is our ALS ambulance, they're the ones responding ALS to Amherst. They would be submitting what their charges are. Their charges as a private are significantly higher. However, what the insurance companies are paying is significantly not that high.
Right.
So our rates,
You gotta think about, you could
However-
charge more, but you're gonna get
correct.
less.
However,
That's
our
just-
rates that we have, every year, Western Mass Fire Chiefs puts together a list of all the departments that are running services. And we look at what all those charges are. They're substantially lower than the private ambulance services. So the insurance companies are looking at it saying, that's a pretty reasonable charge. You have the Medicare and Medicaid, which is pretty much set in stone. But there are options for applying to grant funding at the end of the year to get some of that reimbursement back, which is what we would be doing. But also, we have some other ideas of how we might be able to bring in additional revenue. But yes, you're always gonna have the ones where folks aren't paying. We've had issues, and the state has been addressing that, where we were, insurance companies were sending the checks for, to the actual person who was injured or the person that wanted a ride to the hospital. They would cash the check and use it for themselves, and then it wouldn't come, they were supposed to submit it to the, you know, to the service. Legislatively, they're working on cleaning that up.
So on slide 6, the difference between cash collection versus net billing is what we're talking about here.
Well, the 778 is accounting for losses.
Correct.
That
is an actual correct cash.
Yeah, that's the collection after the write-offs, after the non-payments and everything else. So,
That's approximately the percentage you assume on that.
well, it's based on the action data.
Correct. That is based on action stated, yes.
And you're saying it's an approximate 57% is what is the write-off?
For Medicare and Medicaid.
Oh, that's for
Yeah.
just.
So they break it down based upon the individual insurance companies, but also this is Action. We reached out to Pro EMS. And Pro EMS is our billing company. They get 4% of what we make, which is really reasonable considering our call volume. But they look at it differently. They don't want to look at the percentages. They want to look at the actual revenue per call. So the actual cash received per call. And we're just not quite at a full year of data yet. So we will be getting that data and we'll share it with you as soon as we get it, just for our BLS bus. But that gives you a pretty clear view of what we're looking at for a BLS rate versus an ALS rate.
Project.
For our ambulance.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
This is not including Action at all. This is just Hadley Fire.
Action, we were asked to have Action put this into their system, so we did, and that's what.
So Hadley took over Actions. ALS and BLS.
We will go into that with you, but yes.
So we pay 100,000 a year.
Correct.
So there's all this. Revenue is just all this in the secondary calls.
Because they wouldn't, for a second ambulance, they wouldn't charge us 150,000. It would be probably closer to $500,000 for like a flipping ambulance. For that call.
And they might not have the staff too for paramedics as well. That's the other struggle with private EMS.
Just a quick question. You referenced that with the Medicare Medicaid shortfalls, there are potentially grants to cover some of that. Where are those federal or state or?
State, it's a state application.
Great. That's all I wanted to hear.
So there is a potential a return.
One does impact the other because. of Medicaid
yes.
funding, right?
Yes, I do get that, but at least there's a hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a hope. There's a possibility. Otherwise,
And we know how state.
right. That's right. I just heard that. Yeah.
So in your package, it does show you our current billing rates. And the suggested increase for July is probably gonna be about a 4.2% increase. That's what we've been hearing across the state potentially. So you'll probably see those go up. So we put together just some proven pros of our full-time fire EMS system to improve response times. Obviously, our response times have, we average between a 4 to 6 minute response time, very different from the days of our call force, 10, 15 minutes, and then the ambulance was 8 to 20 minutes. So that has been a great improvement. In my opinion, cost effectiveness, I understand that we are not fully funding the fire department EMS budget, but we certainly could potentially be taking a big chunk out of it of revenue. With just that one estimate that you saw there. Enhanced coordination in emergencies. So with these crews working together, training together, it's different than Action EMS being parked separately, not having firefighter capabilities. They are strictly there for EMS. We don't always know who's going to be showing up, if they're showing up at the ALS level. So that enhanced coordination for us, that means that, if, again, I put together 3 tracks for you that you'll see, but if hypothetically we went with all 7 new hires and had 4 per shift, that would be 4 going out the door to a structure fire, or 2 going out on a primary ambulance with 2 at the station to go out for a structure fire, or 2 to go out on a second ambulance call, or whatever other emergency comes in. So again, improved community preparedness as well. So here are the tracks of potential service, and we put pros and cons in for you of each. So status quo, as of right now, I completely understand where we are with the budget, and I respect that. I know that times are tight, and we can't completely fill everyone with this. However, it maintains what we have right now. So it maintains 2 firefighter EMTs on shift. We would continue our contract with Action. However, we would continue with going forward with our ALS licensure and putting our ambulances into service, because that's what we were tasked with. We were tasked to get the ALS level for the town of Hadley. So that would then increase those revenues for our second calls. And I truly, I'm telling you right now, I truly believe that the volume would increase as well.
How are we with the licensing of the ALS, or what we're asking?
We are on track. Our ALS, our coordinator he's about to have the completed application. I think, is it the next slide that has it?
Yeah, something to the state, or
No, sorry.
that they,
We go to the state, and I believe it's in here. I think we got some of that in here.
It's usually a 6 month, once we submit, it usually takes about 6 months, but because they're hurting so bad for paramedic and EMS, that they're trying to push those forward to get things moving quicker.
There is a portion that will be going through that coming up. So track 2 was to increase by 3 on shift. So I'll be hiring 3 additional firefighter EMTs. That would maintain, so we could maintain a minimum of staffing of 2. That way, if somebody is out sick, somebody's out on vacation, we could drop to the 2, and then myself and the deputy would be that backup again. Call force as well if available. And then we would continue contract with Action Ambulance for ALS, but we would be looking at potentially some kind of a hybrid approach with them. Maybe, for example, this is in the document for you to read, maybe seeing if they would be willing to only do the high impact hours during the day and let us take over on the overnight. A high percentage of our calls are obviously during the day. We do have that data. But again, that's something we could take a look at as part of that track 2 and track 3. Track 3 again was the increase of staffing to 4 on shift. So that's an additional 7 we would need to hire. It would maintain 4 firefighters on shift. I just went through what that might provide for us. And then Action basically would no longer be our ALS provider. they could certainly remain in the community as a backup. Because there's never enough ambulances in town and in this region. And again, only option that meets the OSHA and FDA regulations for the standard.
Keeping number.
The two in, two out rule. So track one, we have the pros and cons, and it goes through that very clearly in the package for you. But track one, obviously, it's budget conscious. Comprehensive coverage, revenue potential is there, but just not at what we could see it with the 3 or 7. Enhanced response, obviously that has happened now with having it. We just went through that, but our response times have improved substantially.
Can you go back a slide? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have a question. Status quo. We have 2 firefighter EMTs on shift.
Correct.
So if action's out on a call, a second ambulance comes in, we respond, right? Or do we have to leave our firemen,
Those 2
fire people waiting for a fire?
Those 2 firefighters are getting on our
So
ambulance.
then what happens if we have a fire?
If we have, as soon as
And
that.
they call you,
Yes, well,
Okay.
during the week, yes,
Yeah.
or obviously I don't have much of a life. outside of
I
that.
was sorry, I want people to understand. I want people to
Yes.
understand how underpersoned we are right now, whether we do anything at all. I think we're in a precarious situation right now. Okay, I'm sorry, it costs a lot of money to do any of this, but I can't believe that a town with this many buildings and people and calls has 2 firefighters on duty that are also running an ambulance. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say. So if you have that situation right now, we have to call Amherst or somebody else to put the fire out, hope they can get over here and they're not dealing with, some problem at fire in their area.
And they're staffing for.
And I did appreciate our truck in the Gazette the other day, helping with that fire.
Yes,
Nice PR.
yeah.
Glad we fixed it.
Yeah.
That's why it's yellow.
Yes, I know. It showed great contrast there. No, okay, that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, thank you.
It just so you're aware
Tell me
that,
next time.
again, if our firefighters go out the door for that second call for.
Yeah.
Either a fire or
Mhm.
for an ambulance. It is an automatic call to call force members.
So you bring
and
them in,
We try to get folks to come
Right.
in if they're available.
okay, but again,
During the day, they're at work, they can't leave work, and sometimes we're
and remote
fortunate.
work isn't riding on a fire truck while you're on.
Yeah.
So,
Again, enhanced response, again, yes, we just went through that. And then reduce dependence on mutual aid. That has definitely been a positive for our partners around us. They truly appreciate, and in all honesty, so our relationship with Northampton, our mutual aid agreement right now, the way it's written, is after 30 calls for them to come over with an ambulance, they're technically supposed to bill us $500 per call. Or $375 per call. After that, you get 33 and then we're charging. They have never, ever charged us because of our mutual aid partnership where we're sending our ladder truck over there. A first alarm assignment. It's Hadley Fire Department, East Hampton, South Deerfield is a RIT team. Amherst to cover their station. So all those departments are going out for a reported structure fire in the building. So that's why they don't charge us, because we are a huge partner to them for all of that. Same thing with Amherst. Again, you saw our ladder truck. It was hard for them to find ladders that day, and ours happened to be the first one on scene, and our
we
guys
just fixed that.
literally.
That's the one we had to fix.
Right.
It's gonna be our backup. Eventually.
And there was a lot of thank yous from their department for, our guys really worked hard on that project. So, again, the cons of this, staffing challenges, operational strain on leadership. Again, it's not that I don't love getting away from the computer and going out on calls, but there's a lot of stuff, succession planning, trying to complete, all these projects that we have going on with fiber, with radios, with making sure our budget's up to date, making sure that my budget isn't going over. Just a lot of stuff, and then trying to get new information, brainstorming with our fire chiefs. Again, overlapping calls, I presented that to you last time, and that data is in here as well. We have a substantial number of calls where there's 2 to 3 calls going on at the same time. And again, the other day we had our Hadley Action Med 1 was out of town at the hospital. our Hadley A1 was transported to the hospital, and we had 2 additional ambulances in town, handling multiple incidents where they had to transport to the hospital. OSHA compliance, again, this is a liability of the town. It's very clear, and I gave you the document that shows you what that risk is. And again, staffing uncertainty. And that's basically that our firefighters, they want us to go ALS. They want to be exercising their paramedics. If they're not exercising that, what's the purpose? Why did they go and spend all that time taking that? They want to see us build and grow. Safety risks, limited response capability. Again, you can see all of that. Track 2, so hire 3 and maintain 3 on shift. Again, revenue potential. We would be able to go with a hybrid approach, I truly feel, with Action, at a minimum, to take over overnights. And potentially additional calls during the day. Maybe we take over the mutual aid calls. Because that's direct revenue to Action. Action's not giving us, if they go mutual aid, they're not giving that revenue or putting that towards our, towards our contract rate, towards our rebate. That's pure cash revenue for them. So enhanced response, again, having 3, we could send 2 out to a medical call, we could send 2 out to a fire call. And still have 1 back up in the station. And so dual purpose response. And then again, we don't have a staffing minimum, so we could keep that overtime budget at a minimum. Again, myself and the deputy would still be committed as that 4th person. Or if there's an additional call after the 2, then it's what we got to do. The cons, again, the minute we have to drop from 3 members to 2, you're back to the cons from drop 1. And then there's the staffing challenges. One of the things is we want to make sure in the town, again, with this union contract, has made it very, very enticing for folks to want to come here. But across the state, across the country, there's a shortage of paramedics and firefighters. It's difficult to do that, to find those folks. Departments are actually looking at hiring just medics they're still labeled as firefighter medics, still under group 4, but that they basically are committed to the ambulance. And then again, the OSHA compliance issue. And then track 3, so hire 7, maintain 4 on shift. Again, the projected revenues, this would open up to that $780,000 potential revenue. We would be in regulatory compliance. The operational efficiency, we talked about the team approach. Responding to a medical call for somebody in cardiac arrest, somebody that you're working CPR on, that's 6 to 8 people. Everybody has a job. One person's innovating, one person's doing compressions, one person's administering drugs, one person's just writing down notes of when everything happened, one person's handling the defibrillator. It's just, you start building up that team concept, and it becomes it's like muscle memory, that crew working together and training together. And then the same thing on the fire ground, deploying the hoses. I would love to have you guys come out, if you'd like to try coming out and seeing what it's like for a firefighter to pull 200 feet, you've done it before, pull 200 feet of a crosslay out of the fire truck, get it to the front door, have it charged, and then have to move it up a floor or 2 floors or 3 floors. It is difficult. So it's not easy to do. Safety and backup, improve response times again, and versatility and flexibility. Again, all these cons and pros are in there for you. And again, the only con really is the staffing challenge of being able to find paramedics. There's a chance that we would have to hire at an EMT level, and we have a very good incentive plan in the town to actually provide payment for an EMT that is interested in going through the paramedic program, which is a huge incentive, which would probably bring some really top-notch folks into our station. We put together some stats for you. It's probably a little bit hard to see, but that breaks down fire versus operate. It breaks down all of our calls, our Hadley fire statistics. So you have that.
Can we get a copy of the deck, by the way?
It's
Yep.
in Word docs here.
We're done, so-
Yep.
Sorry, the total call data comparison for Hadley A1 So we just did a review of 2024. So you can see versus 2025. So I was asked to put together the first 3 months. We're not, obviously, we're not at the end of March yet. So you can see January 2024, February and March, what our transports is versus refusal. So our total call volume was 11, and we transported 6. So we were asked to see if we were seeing increases this year, and you can see that we are. So from 24 to 25 in February, went from 8 to 17 calls. And March, we are at 4 right now, and we still have a couple weeks left. Increased call volume of 40%.
When they refuse a ride, do we still get some billing or nothing?
At this point, no. There are discussions at the state legislature to actually look at if somebody calls for it and you provide a service. So we bring out our chalk box as a cost of that. Is there a way that we can bill insurance for that assessment? But as of right now, no.
So this is just the deals.
This is just the deals, yes. And we went through these statistics. So 2023 responded to 1,672 calls. We had 129 cases of overlapping calls, totaling 266 calls. We had 15 structure fires that we responded to with an estimated property loss of 42,500. 2024, again, record number for us, 2,014 calls, 50% increase since 2015, and approximately a 20% increase from 2023. 952 fire responses and 1,062 EMS calls. This is our fire department. So, there's some data for you for our Hadley A1. And current revenues are approximately $90,000. So if you put that into payback of the town of Hadley, that paid for the 2 ambulances that we purchased. One for $70,000 and one for $20,000. Action Med 1, you can see their responses for 2024. They had 1,425 responses with 289 refusals, 362 canceled before arrival with 774 transferred. And then we also, there are times when Med 2 is in town. So that's the total of the 1,437 responses in 2024. So our goals and objectives and initiatives. So again, by July 1st, we want to have our application for licensure completed and into the state and have our license. We want to be operational by January 1st of 2026. We have training that we have to do as part of our, our OEMS through OEMS, and then our prescription doctor at Julie Dickinson. We need to new EMT paramedics need, a certain amount of ride time on the ambulance. So that time frame, we do have 2 seasoned paramedics that I don't believe that the doctor would make do that ride time. One is our EMS coordinator who actually worked for Action, so he was in the system already. And then our lieutenant training officer, he was a captain on East Longmeadow and basically has quite extensive training on the ambulance as well. We do have 2 new paramedics that have been doing ride time with Hatfield and other departments, AMR, to try and get ahead of this as well, so that they will be prepared for our start as well, which is great. And then we have one of our young ladies on the department. She started in September of 24 with her medic program and is slated to be completed sometime in February of 2026. And then we'll go through her ride time. So again, additional initiatives for us. We will be applying for a staffing for adequate firefighting. Again, the SAFER grant. Obviously, we have not been successful yet, but we're going to give it another shot. And again, we're working. The gentleman who's helping us write the grant is really helping us with outreach to our state legislators so they can truly understand Hadley. So yeah, Hadley has a listed population of 5,000, but we have 60,000 in town every day. So instead of just looking at our population, look at what we're protecting with our commercial structures and that large amount of folks that are in town.
So there's federal.
That's a federal grant. Yep.
And we had talked about reaching out to the governor's office. They said that they could be helpful.
Yes. Yep. That's what he's working on that part for us. The grant's not open yet, so we have, we're waiting for that to open, and we'll start that application. Scheduled pay. So this is another thing we're looking at. had discussions with our extended care facility in town for scheduled patient transports to bring in some additional revenues. So instead of them calling our 911 system, if they can't get somebody to the hospital, which we've been dealing with a few times now, we're in discussions with them. We're not sure what they have for a contracted transport agency, but potentially we could put our backup ambulance if it's a scheduled delivery, and that would be supplemental revenue to our budget. Again, mutual aid discussions with our neighbors, which Amherst is already calling us. We had a pretty busy weekend a couple weeks ago for Blarney blowout, and helped out with that. And again, we also wanted to review and evaluate the potential of an ambulance subscription service. I've had multiple conversations with the chief of Ludlow, and he says it's a successful program in his community. They have a larger, residential base, but basically a subscription service would be if a household or resident of a household wants to pay in to the subscription service and say it's $100 or $75. Basically, if they have to utilize our service and they don't have supplemental insurance, if they're only receiving Medicare or Medicaid, or if they have no insurance at all, there would be no balance billing on their trip. So $100 or $75 would be what would cover it. And again, it's been very successful in a number of communities. Munson also runs this, so we're looking at that. But then continue to work with our Hopkins Academy. We have 2 interns in our town as part of our junior firefighting program that my son put together. The number in 2018, I believe it was. So we're trying to recruit new folks to get them into fire and EMS services. So we've been working with Hopkins Academy on that as well, which has been really great. Right now, they're working on redoing all the emergency to go bags at Hopkins Academy. In conclusion, hoping at a minimum to have staffing available to run the ALS level. So if you decide that we're doing status quo, we feel we really need to move forward with the ALS service. And again, we want to make sure that if we have the ability to do it and we're not violating our union contract, we are looking at utilizing some per diem employees. We do have that in the budget to try and fill some of the gaps. But again, that's all stuff that we're evaluating and hoping to utilize once we go through this. So again, that was really quick. It wasn't. There's a lot more stuff in here for you.
Yeah, and I haven't looked through everything that's on here, but on the expense
Yep.
side of this, I guess to Amy's point, for each of those scenarios, is there an analysis of the revenue side, the expense side, and the gap? Because $778,000 isn't going to nearly cover an additional 7 firefighters, and then we want the overlay of the capital requirements, right? Because action right now, their employee benefit burden, the things we talked about, they pay like 20% or something like that per employee, over closer to 35 to 40, which isn't in the fire department budget. So I think I'll speak for myself. I think we were hoping to see like what is the actual number.
You have, well, in the finance, what was submitted to finance, we broke it down. We broke it down, so you have FY26 requested for status quo versus requested +3 versus +7. Again,
Did you say?
it was, well, I don't, have you seen?
35. Right.
So
Is-
it might be easier to pull up your budget books. And if you look at the fire department specific budget in red at the bottom, you'll have the
33.
funded requests in red. That's one of the data points. You go to the 230 ambulance budget. The other item is red is the 312, 824. That's one of the other data points. And then the Y26 recommended Which is the third day.
That's the fire department.
That's what you would need to add all of those together, and that would be
But does that have, that doesn't have capital and it doesn't have,
that is correct.
And it
That is-
doesn't have
that is-
that.
That's just the straight budgets, does not have capital.
Right.
That's very simple.
It's the ambulance.
So the total of those, they're called in the budget book, additional unfunded requests, that's almost $600,000, and I think that's mostly staff. I believe.
Yeah.
So almost 600,000 in staff.
So if you take that and add it to the 526 recommended ambulance.
I did a, just so you know, I did another evaluation for you, so I moved. Basically, I moved all of the salaries into the fire department budget. So you could, because they're all firefighters as well. So I can give you with status quo. It would be 1.382 million, just a little bit over that. If we were status quo. And
Say
then
that again?
but I'm sorry. 1.382212.
What is that?
That's not.
What do you mean?
That is status quo for hiring, but that's moving everything, all the salaries and overtime from the ambulance into the fire department. So the ambulance budget would then become $199,500. So that's the $75,000 in per diems. And then the expenses to run the ambulance. And I have that, I'll hand this out to you as well. If we requested 3. That would go up to 1.633248 for the fire department side. And again, the other side will remain the same because there's no salaries or benefit or overtime. And then if we requested 7, the fire department budget would be 2.068196. And again, the EMS budget would remain at the 199,000. It might increase a little bit. There is one increase potential on the billing side for Pro EMS. It depends on what our calling volume is, but if we're paying 4%, if there's anything, they get paid no matter what. So if somebody is not paying, we still have to cover that 4% of what they're billing. So, and I did make copies. I also wanted to make sure that you're aware that the fire department budget on the expense side, $166,298 of that is a shared expense across all the departments in the town. So the fire department pays for the inspections of all the sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, generators, because it's a public safety function. We know where it's always been in our budget. Fire extinguishers are in our budget. The cell phones, so our IT coordinator has put together all the cell phones for the community are paid out of the fire department budget. Minus the police department, they have separate for theirs. However, we pay for the dog officer and everybody else in the community. And it also includes the high-speed fiber, the internet from Fiber Spring. That's $1,748 a month. That comes out of the fire department budget as well. It also includes police, fire, public safety, communications. So all the maintenance and payments for the installation of the repeated system that's now online finally. So there's a substantial amount of that budget that's covering a lot of other departments.
So when you first brought this up, talking about the ambulance payment for itself, there's something in my mind that doesn't sit right. The town should either have the ambulance, like DPW has a snowplow, or we should have somebody else do it. It should be a real thing. It should be in the budget. We shouldn't look at it as trying to finance it every year to go. And I think that we need to ask the town people if that's what they want.
I just want everybody to realize that if you eliminate the ambulance, so if I didn't separate this, if you eliminate the ambulance budget, you're cutting our department in half because it's been split between the two.
That's that.
So right now, you're saying on this fire department budget, if we say we didn't do the ambulance on this fire department, you don't have enough staff to run your 24/7 on this budget.
No,
they're two separate.
that's moving the funding from EMS to fire.
Collectively, that's. Oh, gotcha, okay.
I'm sorry. Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was correct, as it is in our budget book. If this was, this is not correct, because if we didn't do the ambulance, you're saying you do not have enough in the fire department to continue to run the fire department 24/7.
At the staffing level. No, if you eliminate it, you would be eliminating the OIC firefighter medic who's doing our EMS coordination. His entire salary is in the EMS budget. And then each firefighter was split between fire and EMS because they're going to medical calls, they're going to fire calls. So, so yes, we'd be splitting that budget.
So you would have to then, if we only funded just the fire, not the ambulance, we would have to not be 20%.
Potentially, yes.
And the other thing is in this ambulance budget that's requested, that includes the 180 that we paid.
It does. And it-
That we get back also.
Potentially.
Meaning we've been getting back, like.
No,
Yeah.
not every year. We have not.
Yeah, we've gotten, the least we got was 140,000 1 year.
This past year, we got 140 out of 180. The first year, we got the full amount, 299,000. Second year dropped to like 83,000. You know, it has not been a complete amount.
Too.
Yeah, but there, yeah, it was pandemic, but there was also, again, it depends on what they're getting in for revenue.
So that's in this 811.
Yes, on that.
180 is
Yeah.
in there. At what point would the 180 drop out? Not if you go to the 7, are you saying then that would drop out the 180?
They have milestones that you have to meet. So what they do is they take their cash. There actually means how many staff do you need?
So we wouldn't contract with them.
3 or 7? We could do it with 3, but again, it's gonna be the deputy and I, and using per diems and.
Okay.
And
So 3 is not ideal, so.
It's not ideal, but it can be done. And we evaluated this against a number of communities that actually do that.
With the 3, Mike, would we realize that 700 and whatever, that 700,000?
787.
Would we realize that amount, or would we have gaps in ambulance coverage?
I don't know if you would have gaps. You might be requesting mutual aid a little bit more. Or we may, but then again, you know, if we're sitting there, we get called from Amherst and we have an ambulance, we have to send the ambulance. We can't say no.
Right, but then we're down fire department.
But we're
Right
then,
back to that.
we would have one left in the
Right,
station,
I mean,
and then myself and
just-
the deputy and call force.
Okay, and you've been here a long time, and you're a year and a half or so from retirement. And your work ethic is fabulous, but we can't necessarily expect the next person in to work 24/7. And I think we need to prepare for that. I'm sorry, I think that we're gonna burn him out. I'm surprised he hasn't burned out.
Well,
Just doesn't look it, right?
And I think
One more.
to me, it seems like we've got 2 issues and if we just think about it from a service delivery standpoint, the town needs to provide adequate fire coverage. Right? The town needs to provide more than adequate ambulance coverage, right? And unfortunately, you know, the way that it's all played out with municipalities who have in-house ambulance, it was a means to an end. Right? So the reason that they're really doing the ambulance is because they are trying to grab the revenue so that they can subsidize the fire department. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. And I mean, I'll go on record saying I'm not in favor of reducing our fire coverage. I mean, I can't look at anybody and say that's a good idea. But the question in my mind is still, like David said, for anywhere between $0 and $180,000, we're getting 24/7 ALS coverage in this town. And so in my mind, I'm thinking more along the lines of how do we wrap around that and make sure that the staffing issues and the OSHA and compliance and stuff is resolved, instead of the conversation being the only way we're going to get there is we have to then ditch the ambulance side as we know it today. And I don't know how to have that conversation right now.
I mean, you'd have to tell us that you had your brothers and we forget the ambulance. The size of our department, the number of calls, OSHA regs and all that, how many people do we need?
You would need the three.
4 people. We're gonna need those 4 people per shift.
I mean,
Three.
three per shift, but then again, you're gonna have myself and the deputy are gonna have to be that.
Right, so we really need 4.
I mean, 4 would. Would
4 would be
definitely,
what you should be having.
But basically, this revenue that you had calculated, even if we kept 3, this because this is based on really 7. That's 778.
the 778 is, that's actual from,
But I'm just saying, you would probably, to actualize that, you would probably need 7.
I think that's what I disagree with that, because we have one ambulance that can be used, so we have 3 employees that can utilize it. Then it's out. It's not like we got another one and we need more people to jump in the second.
we do have.
No, so this is for, that also covers fire at the same time. So this,
We have 2 ambulances in the station. So again, if we had 3, the way that we would handle it to bring in
3
that,
people.
yeah,
Not 3.
to bring in that revenue you're talking about, because that's what's happening right now, is 2 would go out on the ambulance. And then it would be a callback for additional staffing, myself and the deputy, if another call came in during the work week, during the day, we would be taking the next ambulance or going on the next fire call.
because let's say if there's only 3 people, there's a fire, they're called out on fire. Right, then there wouldn't be anybody. Be one person left or?
There,
nobody?
basically, if there's a structure fire, the whole department would be out,
And there'd
but then we would
nobody.
be doing recall to get people back to help
Right,
for staffing an ambulance.
so that's why you need the extra.
Correct. Yes, and basically, that's standard across every department. If they have a structure fire, they're doing recall to staff the station and, or they're calling mutual aid to help with.
And right now, Action's only doing that, so I mean, we always have
That covered.
that recovery
Ideally, we do.
regardless of what's going on.
Right, but if action goes out on the mutual aid.
Or if action goes out on a call.
Right now,
Short of-
they're actually in Amherst for a call.
Right,
So our guys are up next.
well, and I see Amherst racing back on red to get back because they have another call after they drop someone.
Yep.
You know,
But
back and forth, so.
But if they're out. And we have our 2 people. Ambulance, there's a call for an ambulance. We have
That
nobody,
ambulance is going. Yeah.
that ambulance is going, but we have nobody, there's a 3rd call for fire.
There's a 3rd call for fire. Basically, when that ambulance goes out, it's an automatic call for station coverage for our call force members and our full-time staff. Usually we'll get back, we even have folks that are on call, our call force lieutenants pick up on-call shifts after hours. During the day, it would be myself and the deputy. So if a fire came in, we would be going, hoping some of our call force members would come back. And then if needed, we would be calling mutual aid. And that's the standard across the board. That's why Northampton calls us primary and that's why Amherst calls us
But
mutual aid. Actually quite frequently for Northampton, I would say. Yeah,
I'd say almost once a week if you do the numbers, and then for ambulance, Amherst is almost doing more than 2 times a week.
I believe that information is in here too. We have the mutual aid requests. So what we've given and what we received, because we also get mutual aid in.
Chief, and now we're doing mutual aid for Sunderland.
No, not
Or-
yet. If
Not
they
yet.
called us, we would. So if South County was overwhelmed, they would call us.
I mean, we sent fire trucks. We've sent
Oh,
wood
yeah.
trucks across the state when there are fires and, you know, brush fires.
But they don't call us for the ambulance.
If they will call us if they don't have an ambulance available, if Amherst isn't available to back up South County, they would be calling us or Northampton.
Yeah,
depending on where they-
our action has gone up to Sunderland for a couple of times for calls.
But even with, if you add 3 additional, we go to 3. Right?
We've talked about 3.
3 on, I should say, 3 on. And you look at the 778, which is what is now, let's say. That there's a little bit of a softening of in that number, even if you go down 20% to 600,000. And the total budget would be around 1.7. Fire ambulance budget combined, about 1.7. You offset that. You're still better than what we are now.
Right.
Budget wise.
Yes.
I'm a hard time seeing. Ever approach.
For second, that's it.
So. All calls are slowly increasing. Just don't see how. action is. It was that. Years.
They actually used to. So, and it's actually in their contract too, they just don't have the bench staffing.
Just.
Well, that's why I'm saying, I feel like they're getting conflated and we should be looking at it as just from a service delivery, what do we need?
Right, I agree with that. We need business and service delivery. We're not looking to reimburse the department. The library doesn't get reimbursed for how people send land. The fire department should not be reimbursed for their library.
But just real quick too, to go back to, with the whole action thing too, is we did see their med two up here a little more because we didn't have a second ambulance for us to run, but they're also in Hoyoke. Once they lost the Hoyoke contract, they're spread out now. So they're in Pittsfield, Hamden,
They're in
Springfield, and
But they're really looking for the transport revenue because it's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe there's a way that you send it, you're gonna try to see whatever it is for.
my biggest concern is that I think. My biggest concern, just from seeing what happened in Palmer, I don't ever want to see that happen here in the town of Hammond. So Palmer Ambulance is a private ambulance company, and they gave the town 1 week notice and closed the doors. And the Palmer Fire Chief literally just got his BLS ambulance running just like us. And he had no idea what to do. So now that's a burden on Belchertown and I don't ever want to see that happen here.
That's why we talked to Action about bonding.
Well, it's that, and again, I completely understand where you're coming from, David. I understand that, but I also want to express the quality of care. So not to say that Action hasn't been providing us outstanding ALS service, just like Amherst did. But there are ups and downs where we're having to actually step up and cover at the BLS level because they don't have a medic available. We're fortunate that they have 3 relatively strong medics on board right now that are covering the majority of the shifts, but there was a time where we were calling Northampton like multiple times, multiple days of the weekend to ask can you send a truck over to cover ALS for us?
Yeah, but like you said, Mike, I mean, you're talking about. I mean, we don't have that many people on staff right now, even if we had 3 more.
One more.
You just move the employee burden to the town of Hadley, right? I mean, so now we have the staffing burden. And there's nothing magic about Hadley that we're not gonna run into issues. I mean, we've had people go on deployment, we've had people who are out sick with injuries. And then now we're the ones trying to figure out how on earth to staff this thing. At least right now, it's with an organization that the only people they have on staff are all EMTs, right? And again, I think we've got a fire staffing issue that we need to be seriously thinking about whether or not we do think is adequate right now with the 2 of you bearing the brunt of call volume challenges, if I can put it that way. But we have had good experience with Action, so I don't want to kind of jumble those 2 things up, because if they're responsible for their equipment, they're responsible for making sure they've got state-of-the-art whatever. But the payroll benefits, all of that stuff. And in the absence of looking at this and seeing a multi-year plan that's going to have the capital associated with this, because now we're taking that on as well. I think the expense side of it isn't. I think the gap that Shardul was talking about, like whether it's 600,000 of revenue, I think the expense side of this is actually much higher.
You add capital
If
and
you add in-
reserves.
And they're bearing that right now. So,
And the other thing is with Action won't do a BLS because our cost structure is different, because we have that one person who's also a firefighter. So the actual salary that's being allocated to ambulance is half compared to Action, which is 100%. Because we're also putting it on the fire bucket. No, I'm just saying, yeah, but I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to do BLS because they wouldn't do it because there's not enough money. Because $90,000 a year or $100,000 a year is not gonna cover an extra ambulance or an extra person. For that, I think. Well.
But that wasn't the intent though.
Yeah.
Again, I appreciate that. I am also a taxpayer, so I'll take my fire hat off, but I truly value making sure that there is a top-notch ambulance, and I know that that's what our department would provide. You've been a part of multiple studies, and there's always been the phased-in approach. So since 2016, the phased-in approach, or actually before that, 2013. So, you know, you're aware of where we're at for numbers. You see the numbers that Action gives us every year. It was never stated, and I learned this because my position when I started was based upon how much I would bring in revenue for doing inspections. And every year that was the question by finance. How much money did you bring in revenue for inspections? And that wasn't the intent, but that's how it was provided when that position was created. And it adds a lot of stress. I'm telling you, if we decide that we're not going to operate our ambulance service, you're going to see a clearinghouse of our members who really have been working hard, who have their medics, who are obtaining their medics. You're going to see where this isn't going to be the place that they're going to want to be. They are here for both fire and EMS. And again, I'm concerned that we might even see even more of a difficult strain on trying to find staff.
See, I have a big problem. Bring firefighters, but they were hired to. We're getting partner provide service. Service and this is not enough out here. We set it up in a contract. Contract. That's.
No, that's just because they're not practicing what they've taken the time to.
For their
obtain.
paramedic license.
So for their paramedic license, you know, for them to be here and not be operating, providing ambulance service. So again, if we're talking about completely eliminating the ambulance, that's what I'm saying, is if they're here just to be firefighters, and we have 4 firefighters on duty or 3 firefighters on duty. Again, we're trying to bring in to support revenue in any way that we can. So I understand it's an increased cost, but I think that service is critical for the town.
Now, we've got a second ambulance right now, one that's BLS, one that's sitting there to be fully staffed.
They're both
Waiting
staffed.
for it to be staffed. Now, there'd have to be more employees, whether if it's because of operational costs or salaries. It doesn't make sense to having a second BLS because we have the second bus already, or it's just not worth it because we'd still have to have more hiring.
The backup ambulance, we had an opportunity to purchase the 2022 because we're operating a 2009 ambulance with very high mileage on it. We take care of it. We keep it immaculate. Brian is on it all the time, but it's a 2009. That's our primary ambulance right now. So we're anticipating, we had an opportunity to pick up an ambulance at just, I mean, this ambulance is a $450,000 ambulance if you're to buy it.
At a fire sale price, I think.
At a fire sale
With the
price of
equipment.
$70,000. That's why we picked it up, so that if our primary ambulance goes down, we would not see that interruption in service to our.
Okay,
community.
so it's more or less for a backup
Yeah.
for it to happen.
It's a backup that can also be utilized if there's multiple calls. So like we said, you know, so if Action is out and our primary folks take the second call. Again, Evan and I would be in the third ambulance, if the
Right.
second ambulance, if if need be, or.
Or scheduled transfers, we can use that second ambulance to schedule transfers too as well, out of. Having it waiting.
If you were to. Just taking into consideration the entire discussion and perhaps what folks at this table would be interested in. Outside of putting it to the town, if you were to keep status quo as it is. You don't need to hire anyone else. Can you still run the BLS ambulance as it is run now?
We are, yes. And it would be,
And there would be
elevated
minimal
to ALS.
revenue. And once we get our license, you can still do it. You just wouldn't be able to do it at the full rate where you'd be making that kind of.
No, we would just be doing the second calls again and mutual aid. So it may,
Less volume.
Would your less
Yeah,
volume,
less volume.
would your staffing, the fire department side of things, the Paul's point earlier, would that need to be increased to make sure that people remain safe and things like that? Like,
you're talking about status quo or
yeah,
status quo? Yeah, we're supposed to have 4 people starting an operation at a fire operation. So right now you have us to 2. And then
even
myself
if we
and
added 3 people total, the middle path.
Yep.
You're only gonna get to 3.
we would have 3 that would be responding,
Which is still
the 4th would be
low.
myself and the deputy. Or
So you wouldn't be able to get to the point that Paul is talking about, even with the middle.
well, not with full-time firefighters, we would be taking
Right.
administrative, be taking executive officers that would be filling that. So the deputy chief and we're still operational, so it would be the deputy chief. You would be on that.
I just think that, that the decision needs to be made about which direction we're gonna head. I don't know exactly where Jane was going with asking the town for that earlier, but Linda and I would like a little bit of direction as to how we're gonna work with Mike to build the budget, put it together and know what we're gonna put in front of the town meeting. Whether or not we're gonna roll this thing in and people are gonna say we're doing this regardless of cost, benefit, any of that, or not.
Well, I'm strongly of the opinion that this, if we're going to have an ambulance service, it's going to be part of the department, and it's not going to be self-funded. It's the department, and that's the cost of the town in running ambulances. And I think that's where we belong. I believe all the good things that we have about having our own ambulance here. I love it that our fire department has gone from being on call completely to having people at the fire station. And we've now just taken the second step to have an ambulance. And I think our town needs that. Does that mean
Are you talking the 8 last month? You're talking about the summer edition.
well, or even the second one for start?
So currently. We
have an ambulance right now.
You have an ambulance right now.
No, we're running an ambulance.
Yes,
Yes.
But it's not funded yet.
But
it's not in the. It's not in the budget.
It's funded by, yes,
It's funded by stabilization.
stabilization,
it is in the 26th budget.
By stabilization.
By stabilization.
Oh,
I want.
right.
It is not within the.
I understand what you're saying, how we're gonna pay for it, but it's in the budget in the
Yes.
sense that
We're trying to.
it's shown on the budget.
Yes.
But we're paying it from stabilization. The question is not whether or not we want to run an ambulance, but we're already running an ambulance.
Correct.
It's how do we want to get
How
rid
far
of,
do you want to go?
are we getting rid of action and are we gonna go and incur that responsibility?
And how would we get past the first year? Because stabilization is not a one, it is a band-aid to get us from here to there, and we don't know yet what is there. Is there the full strength? Is there continuing with just the BLS? But the idea of using stabilization for 26 was just to buy some more time as we figure this out.
And if we weren't going to fund it from stabilization, and let's say we went for the 3 option, let's say we went for the 7 option, we'd have to do some type of override. Increase of funding, correct? For-
Yes.
Right.
Slash.
Okay.
But the
Right,
reality
well, we
is,
didn't want to slash, not that good.
but the reality is that even, let's say from 27, we might have to do override anyway.
Understood.
Well, in stabilization, we're reducing the reserve
Right.
by a third.
Yeah.
Right. We'll be down to, what did you say, 5%, I think, Molly? So right now, we're not even at 10% of our budget. We'll be going down to 5%. When really, we should have at least 10 to 20% in that amount.
The money, Linda, that's taken out of the stabilization fund in this budget is for the status quo, correct?
Yes.
It's for exactly what you see in, which is not allowed. Right.
Which may decrease because we've been doing rollovers, so. We have not, I don't know if we're gonna expend the entire EMS budget right now, because they've been, so the first year was 460,000. Then there was an $85,000 injection, and then there was a $350,000 injection. We're pinching every penny and not utilizing every drop of that money. So for example, the $75,000 or $70,000 of per diems, we're not using that. So if that's being rolled over, it may cover some overtime costs, but we're not using it, it's getting rolled over to the next budget. So your ask might be minus 70,000. It might be minus another 20,000 in equipment and supplies because we already have it. That was an ambulance budget we were asked to put together of what it was going to cost to operate that.
So my opinion on, because of our current financial status, is that, like Molly mentioned, let's bond action and then, keep working toward our certifications for the ALS, for the licensure for ALS, but to be planning to get rid of action at this point, I don't think there's any way that we possibly afford it. And action's been working. I know sometimes there's been assets, but generally what we had, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, for action took over. Response times are much better. We've got them at North Station now. We've got our guys here at Main Station. I just financially, I don't see a way that it's going to work and work to bump up the staffing and get rid of action and have ourselves all up and running in no time. I think there's a lot of capital costs that we're not taking into account, a lot of insurance related issues. I see there's just a lot of stuff that I don't get the grasp on yet as far as taking it over.
I mean, ideally, we would do number 3, but we're in a position financially that we can't. So we need to figure out how we would keep going forward without breaking.
That's why, we put the status quo in there, so we understand that, we understood that that was probably gonna be the direction, so we are. I hate to say it, because I don't like basing it upon revenues for public safety, but the fire department, that's been what we've been asked to do. Again, I don't know if it's the same across the board for everybody. Like Jane says, the senior center doesn't get reimbursed for people coming in and playing pool. You're gonna get one of those point operated ones.
We're gonna start.
But again, I think that, with the service we're providing, I don't think you understand the amount of stuff that we're giving to the town. And it's not just responding to fire and EMS. We are constantly out in the
Yeah, I
public.
don't think
trying to-
anybody's, honestly, I don't think anybody's questioning that. Really.
No,
It's-
I understand that,
Yeah.
but again, I'm expressing a little frustration because. Everybody has known where we've been going with this. You've been a part of that ambulance oversight
Amy
committee.
has to.
Amy has too, and Mike's been a part of it as well, but there has been a very set. Like, I've been given marching orders, so that's what I've been doing. So if there was a point where those marching orders weren't the direction we were looking at, then I understand that, but it would be nice if folks would come in and actually communicate with me on that, because
Mike, I think this is exactly what's happening right now. I mean, everybody has been behind the plan, right? But the plan started to, I'm not gonna call it unravel, because that's dramatic, it doesn't unravel. It's just that some of what we thought was gonna happen really hasn't happened. And I say that from And again, it's not, throwing blame in any direction. But things have taken longer than we thought they were gonna take, right? I mean, just getting the BLS ambulance, and you guys worked super hard on that to get it up and running, but it took longer than you originally thought. And the world hasn't stood still while this is happening, right? So a fire union formed in the middle of it, which caused our costs, right? So the original numbers you were working with, in fairness, were very different from the environment we're in right now. Our cost structure is much higher than it was. So now, and then the other thing that's
We
happening,
got fire capacity, coverage capacity.
yeah, and on the
Lot
way,
of it, Cause that, some of that cost is really on the ambulance side.
and on the
which
revenue
was-
side of things, we've got revenue compression because with Medicaid, Medicare reimbursement rates, right? So actions revenues, that they're, it's not a nice little chart that goes like this, right? I mean, the payer mix matters. So again, I think what's happened is that now we're sitting in 2025, looking at the same scenario saying, maybe we need to do a timeout until we factor all these other things in. So, right, again, I just want to be really clear publicly, this is not a criticism. I don't think anybody was leading people down a path and they were pulling the rug out from under you. And you're right, I mean, I was there all along, Amy was there all along. We just thought this was gonna work out differently than it has. And the economy right now is not in our favor. And I say the economy, I should say, policy, federal reimbursements, all of that, because it affects all of this. And personally, I'd rather, right now, to alleviate strain on you from a management standpoint, if this is all actions doing all day long, and they're lobbying, and they're at the Capitol building and doing whatever they need to do to try to get some relief so that those revenues can at least remain intact, let them, keep them from going backwards, through policy lobbying. We don't have the capacity to be doing that as well. So, and my concern is I'm kind of fine with the way things are in the ambulance right now. So whether it's option 1 or option 2, I don't know, but option 3 for me is like, I just don't see it happening right now.
The bigger question is that even if we keep the status quo, how are we gonna pay for it?
Well, that was my question, is this, I'm worried about the status quo in option 1 right now, because it looks to me like, if the town chooses not to do stabilization, that 552, and we're using the 90,000 from the special revenue in there, which is being taken out of the ambulance part. But I'm just saying right now, if he's moving that, all that salaries from the ambulance to the fire, I believe we're gonna be out of balance by staffing. I'm worried. And we're using anticipated free cash, and I don't want to use anticipated free cash for staffing or employees. I don't, because unless we're gonna change the structure of the fire department. Right now, we need to move the staffing from the ambulance to the fire department, because that's what they need to run a 24/7 fire department. Right?
It's already there.
Right.
Amy,
But
it's not, we're not moving
but if-
anybody.
if the
That salary
plan
is
is-
already there.
If the plan is status quo, that means that town still wants him to run ambulance service, which means we still have to come up with all of the expenses that are built into the ambulance budget. So even the employees,
leave them there.
I mean, at this point, it's just, I think the way we should approach it, if we're gonna keep the status quo and allow him to continue to, what he's been doing is just focus, like, we don't need to move anybody, just focus on how to pay for that ambulance budget. Fire department is covered. It's built into this budget that Linda has put together, and it's balanced, but that one block is not, so.
The one block of the ambulances.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Correct.
But
So
that
eight-
ambulance in that line item is the part that I'm worried about. And it's the line item for the ambulance that I'm worried about is that staffing. that 5118 wages full-time.
Yeah.
That number.
Yeah.
Is the
I
one,
completely understand the concern, but then we're not doing the status quo. If we just take those folks out and put them in the fire department and just figure out a way to pay for the people, and we can't pay for the rest of it, then we can't run the ambulance. Is that not accurate? Like, if all those expenses go away, you can't.
Well, we also lose the 24/7 fire cover.
Well, no, I think what Amy's saying is let's salvage the people, put them over in the fire department budget and just figure out a way to pay for that portion. 370, 392, 679.
Expensive.
Why are we
Operating
even
expense.
separating them at this point?
well,
That's what I said.
Why can't
Let's
you
not.
just look at fire and ambulance and just like,
Yeah, because.
Oh.
$10 and $10 equals $20.
no, it's just fine, but it's more of what is not, what we don't have covered in what we're using in anticipated free cash, what we're not gonna have covered. And a lot of that is what we talked about is the ambulance that's not covered. In that budget, that the ambulance that's not covered.
Right.
Includes the fire department stash.
right?
I think
because
it's
they're
just,
firefighters.
it's about reducing the risk. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
It's about reducing the risk, of losing employees by using anticipated free cash for their wages.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm worried about using anticipated free cash for salaries.
Right.
Which we're not doing with this budget.
Before we go
Okay.
any further, Mike, I want you to understand that what you did was not a waste of time.
No, I didn't. Trust me, I
Okay.
don't feel that way
Kind
at
of
all.
sounded like.
I apologize.
We
If
all
it sounded
need-
that way. That wasn't the
We
intent.
all needed this information to help make a decision, so it was extremely helpful. I know it took you a lot of time and effort, and I appreciate that. I just want you to know what's not.
I think we should know this until our next meeting. Wow.
I think that was the intent. I read through, I only made it through one of his documents. but it's really, read the other one. The other one's really good. I really think that it'll be a really good, well-rounded picture of what the fire department does. And we can put it on for this meeting or.
Oh, yeah.
So Shardul, you and I had talked about the pro forma budget as well. Are you okay? I was gonna submit a master to Jennifer. Would you like to add that to this, or do you not think it's necessary?
I don't think it's necessary because you kind of did that. already.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
But I do have a master that will provide, I'll give it to Jennifer. You have it all, but there's some additional, there's 3 years worth of actions reports, so you can see their data as well. Just remember that 2022 was coming out of that COVID era as well.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Always.
All right, and the trooper of the evening. Dale. Oh, so are you, sorry, are you gonna stay?
That's what we're here for.
That, just this, or you just have Kayla? Because I mean, we don't need to, we can listen to Kayla. if it's-
Well, we're just gonna do the town meeting warrant too.
Oh, you're gonna do the town meeting more?
That's on here tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
well, here's the thing, we need the town meeting warrant, but I guess we could look at it through, is everyone fine looking at it through board docs?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that next right after Kayla. I just wanted.
Okay, so,
Yeah, that's fine.
that's fine.
Yes.
Do you want to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting tonight.
Second.
Everybody needs a hobby.
Everybody- All right, so all in favor, including Andy Kopacki?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Paul, yes.
Cardinal, yes.
Peter, yes.
Amy, yes.
Yes. On the screen.
Andy can't speak, but he has his hand up, so he
Okay.
said yes.
We can read his lips. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but we-
I'm sorry.
I'll be quick.
Well, that's okay,
Hear
I
me
just
now?
need to walk out on you. No, it's fine.
Can you hear me now?
All right,
Can you hear me now?
Kayla, welcome. You're gonna give us your departmental update. All right.
Can't hear me now, can you?
All right.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Kayla Lubriel. I'm here today as the Conservation Agent and Land Use Coordinator to provide updates on the Conservation and Land Use Department. I brought a very brief presentation. So I transitioned from a part-time conservation agent to a full-time land use coordinator in November of 2023. And over the past year, I spent a lot of time just learning and getting acquainted to the role. When the job was first described to me, I was told that it would be like building a plane mid-flight. So we're building a plane. It's nothing fancy, but it'll get you to where you need to get eventually. So besides, figuring out what this job will look like, over the past year, I've had a few priorities. The first is maintaining an efficient wetlands permitting process. So having a full-time staff member in the office has really helped expedite the process of just wetlands permit applications. We usually close permits out within 1, maybe 2 meetings if needed. Just having somebody to answer emails, phone calls and everything makes things faster. Some of the larger projects we've permitted in the past year are the Subaru reconstruction, UMass geothermal wells project, East Street culvert replacement, and Econo Lodge site improvements. I've also been focused on organization and consolidation. So there's now one office for most files for conservation, planning board, ZBA, and CPC. And working on downsizing, trying to digitize things where I can, getting rid of unnecessary files, duplicates, and all of that. We've also combined the conservation, planning, and ZBA budgets for fiscal year 26. So this makes it easier to just pay invoices, keep track of finances, and reduces some redundancies. I've also tried to expand our community engagement and education. So last summer, I worked with Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources and DEP and CISA. We organized an educational workshop on agricultural ditch maintenance and how the Wetlands Protection Act applies. We got pretty high attendance and overall positive feedback. It was a pretty hot topic, so I thought it would be a good idea to just host an information session instead of responding to 100 calls about it. We also have recently passed a tree cutting policy, which basically just outlines a framework for handling tree removal or tree cutting requests in wetland resource areas uniformly. So the thought was to increase transparency and hold everybody to the same standards, makes things more efficient. We can look at a sheet, say, how far is it from a wetland? How much can we approve without going through all these like permitting processes? And also a priority has been just figuring out how 4 different boards like things done. So working with these committees and figuring out different dynamics that works for everybody, 4 different work styles and adapting to all of their needs. Then looking forward, I have a few goals for 2025 and past that. The first is resilience projects. I'm part of a group called Fort River Forward, which is made up of representatives from towns within the Fort River watershed. And we are currently working on an MVP grant application for culvert assessment and a prioritization plan within the watershed. So this will be a joint application between the 5 towns. So we're hoping that's going to be submitted for this grant cycle. The Conservation Commission is also looking to update the wetlands bylaw. I don't know if that's a 2025 project, but our current wetlands bylaw is pretty out of date. A lot of towns have used the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions model bylaw to draft their own bylaws. So as DEP proposes new wetlands regulations with a focus on climate resilience, we want to make sure that our bylaws up to date. And then another initiative for sustainable development is that I'm sure you know about the Planning Board Smart Growth Committee. That was kind of on hiatus while they figured out funding, but they're back in motion again. So they're exploring developing a smart growth 40R bylaw. I would like to have more public education or engagement, hosting more educational programs, gauging what topics residents want to know more about, and also making sure that we have resources available online on the town website, having all our application materials there, any other sorts of helpful resources. We also, most of these committees are either hybrid or remote, which has resulted in increased participation. We want to make it easier for people to come to our meetings. And yeah, the last major goal for 2025 and beyond is project monitoring. This is mostly related to the Conservation Commission in regards to wetlands permits and follow-up. So there are a lot of open permits, permits that were approved and kind of haven't been followed up on. So I want to figure out a way to keep track of those, check up on those, get things closed out that should be closed out, which, you know, relies on having an efficient file organization, and making land management more of a priority. So checking in on our conservation restrictions and all the town Conservation Commission owned land. Yeah, this is something that's gone pushed to the wayside. But, you know, as I get acquainted to how everything is organized in the office and what land we should be managing, we're hoping to have more follow-up on those. So that's basically it. Overall, we're still getting our ducks in a row as a pretty new department with one full-time staff member, but focused on, you know, moving forward.
Question about the wetlands. That
Sure.
forces that somebody does something that they're not supposed to happen.
So it's basically the regulations that apply are the wetlands protection regulations. So there's no new regulations. It just provides a framework for saying if you have a tree, if it's a hazard tree, it's a dying tree, you don't have to go through the whole permit process. It kind of provides a clear framework for how to approach situations where we get a lot of like calls or just questions about, can I take down this tree? It's near a stream. I don't know what I could do with it. It just outlines what you can do with it. And
So what if it says I can't, I do it?
then, I mean, then that's the regular wetlands enforcement. We would probably just say, hey, you know, next time, let us know. We try not to, you know, be too harsh because we want to make it easy for people to come to us. We don't want people to just do things because it's too complicated to get through the Conservation Commission. So we're focused on education so people know what they need to do ahead of time.
Sounds like you got your ducks pretty well lined up.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I could say, you know, I know certainly the departments that you, or boards that you provide service to, collectively are pretty darn happy that you're here. Really, the work that you're doing has been very impactful and positive way. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'll say residents, I haven't heard any negative, anything about conservation specifically. So it's a good thing. We'll see how everyone knows.
Right.
About it.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, sorry you had to wait. So
That's okay.
I'm sure you.
Yeah,
did.
it's very large. I'm glad I don't have to run the fire department.
Okay, so quickly, consent agenda. This evening, we have the cemetery mowing award going to Master Landscaping, an automatic amusement license for Premier Amusements. They have 13 devices in total. Where are they?
Similar. Change down against.
And asking for approval on the compensation study and policy that was previously voted on by the select board, and a right of first refusal, 156 River Drive.
If I can pull back, we can explain what that is. Please.
Yep, okay. Okay, so do we have a motion for the other items?
Motion to approve minus right of first refusal.
Second. A second, motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Jennifer, you want to talk about 156 River Drive?
This is a right of first refusal. It's a standard thing that y'all get asked about constantly, and that's why I feel like it's something that would be non-controversial.
It's not controversial, Jennifer. I just want the town people to know what's going on, so I can explain it, I think.
Okay, yep.
So this is mostly farmland with a house on it.
Yep.
And the farmland was in chapter 61 or 61A, I don't know which one it is. 61A, okay.
And this is located at 156 River Drive.
Correct. And so because it's in what's called chapter land, they get a major tax reduction.
Mhm.
And when said land, chapter land goes up for sale, town has right of first refusal to buy it
Mhm.
at the agreed upon price with whoever's buying it now. So seeing as how we don't have any money. We don't really, I don't think it's gonna help the town to own this land. They're asking us to waive our right.
And then there's some previous problems on it about buried stuff.
I don't believe so, Jane. There's a little house, you know, where River Drive Excavating is.
Yeah.
Two houses beyond that. It's kind of a house out all by itself. Last house on the left before you hit the woods across from the sugar shack. It's fresh mobile tips.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Which makes it prime real estate, right? Think of itself.
Well, it's all in the floodplain.
Well, that's what I'm just looking at. It is 12 acres of land with waterplain.
All in the floodplain. Sadly. And I think the current offer was over $400,000.
Okay. In the future, I think we typically don't have this as part of the consent agenda because the town should always be looking at whether or not there is an opportunity. So, yeah, I don't think we should just assume.
I've done due diligence with conservation and Scott. And so I did fit in there also this time, such a thing that you can do.
Yep.
But yeah, and you have the acquisition policy. that we're gonna get. Right,
No problem, Tim.
definitely do that.
Pull it out. We'll talk about it. Matter of fact, so that's fine.
Okay, so
So motion to approve the right of restitution on 56 River Drive.
motion made by Randy, seconded by Amy,
Jane,
Jane, sorry.
Just for the record, I need to abstain if I have a conflict.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so 4. Okay, skip up public comment for now. Town Administrator Search Committee.
This is just the second time it's coming up because we have gotten citizen applications. So the committee is filled with the exception of the select board deciding who their two designees would be. And I would ask that we do that tonight and then vote. As I have an email teed up to go out to John Petron. And I'll connect everybody via email so we can get things going.
And Jane, we held off, we didn't want to do it last time without you. So
Thank you. I would like to do that.
Not possible.
I'm with you.
Mayor Lawler.
Amy?
you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
I have quite a full plate, so I'm happy in either direction.
Yeah,
Want to do it?
yeah.
So Amy and Jane.
I already typed both of their names. So you want to be the alternate just in case Amy has. meeting during the day?
Oh, so,
They need to
want me
vote.
to be, in case, yeah, depending on when they're meeting, an alternate then, if for whatever reason, Amy or Jane can't make it.
All right.
And the 2 additional residents. Yeah.
Okay, the annual town meeting.
Actually make a motion for that committee.
Oh, sorry.
And make it.
Right.
Second.
A motion made by David, seconded by Randy. All those in favor? Aye. Annual town meeting warrant. Mike?
Jennifer?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Should we talk about these two residents? Expressed interest in the committee?
Since we already voted them in.
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, they were the only 2, so we had 2 slots.
Nobody wants the job.
Jennifer, what do you got to say?
So I voted the board up for your review. Council has already seen the first draft. Linda and I will be meeting with them about a couple of warrant articles coming up. I can run through really quickly with the timeline to distract the knowledge we discussed this a lot. And then so Article 1 is the independent elections always, and then we have our consent agenda items. So right now we have the grants, chapter 9, short-term borrowing contracts, accessible years, and the water treatment plant filtration and run at 180,000. So all of those are sort of our typical, and I have prior year invoices on here because we have not been working that happen, so it's a placeholder. And please be aware that there are placeholders. That the Article 8, we are being held from council on this one. That's one of the reasons that I meet with them on Friday. This is to be that redirection of the OPEC competition that y'all that has been presented to y'all with the budget. Then Article 9 is the omnibus budget, then enterprise, and then we go into CPA. And this is a CPA heavy meeting. They've already met and are approved and made their recommendations. So there is extension of the historical board. CPA, the 17th Supreme Court, the meeting mortgage. The CPA Old County Sanitary plans, they finished up. I'm talking about this, but maybe all that will happen. Then what happened, Paul Bell, that was something that's like we're voting on a long time ago to save that out of the fire station. So that's coming forward. The going forward is going in another one for the housing housing. And this for the church. And I'll bring Mary in for the forum, sort of did it. If you don't have any questions, I'll have to put in for that. And then jumping right to APRs, is the agricultural preservation restriction. There are 4 of them. I do want to be clear, these are all preliminary because CPA and conservation have not met yet. But MDOT has given us the information and now we know everything. And I sort of know the recommendations of what we're going to have to go forward. They're not going to really move until Monday, so your copies are highlighted to sort of show that. But that's where we are. All of those are monies in the cover those that we don't think. And then the CPA is reporting bylaw change. And this is sort of just cleaning up the original bylaw. This is really, for example, conservation commission said 1 year conservation as designated by the commission for a term of an initial term of 1 year, and then an additional term of 3 years. And since this is no longer the implementation, they're just removing that. Council has seen this already, and this is their recommendation today. In the past, we've done a strikeout when things are being removed, but Lisa has been recommending that we hold it otherwise for them to change. If y'all don't like it, we'll go back for 4 ways. And then straight along Articles 27, 28, and 29 are local options for the taxes. They have not been approved by the state legislature at this time. But this would allow, to adopt them now in 10-minute public passing, which means that we would not have to wait until the next time we get to vote on it, that we'd be able to start collecting those revenues immediately. So this is again contingent, but it's a good choice in town, especially if I revenue issue like. And then the last 3 are planning board and after the conversation will get them to.
So we don't have the DPW is not on.
DPW is not on there, the Hero Act is on there.
I'm sorry, what's the second?
Your Hero Act.
Oh, the Hero.
We're gonna have somebody come in, well, not somebody, student Collins is gonna come in on the 2nd. And I haven't heard from the assessor's office to discuss what that would be. For excise and real estate taxes. So that would be another one that we would add on, and then yes, the DPW, y'all have not taken like a full robust discussion, that's why I'm not being on here.
Yeah, and I think that's something we need to do sooner rather than later. So Mike, I'll talk to you about that. just, and then I'll be careful, with open meeting law, but in the context of the warrant and making decisions sooner rather than later about what might be put in front of the taxpayers. Can I just ask if we could find a time to just have maybe a relatively short but focused discussion? Where we're at with the DPW, would people be amenable to scheduling like an extra meeting?
Is it something that you want us to bring in the committee to discuss it, or is it more of just a discussion on the cost and whether or not it's gonna go on the warrant just for the select board?
That's a good point. Might be hopeful to have somebody from the committee there. Oh, yeah, right, Randy's on the committee. We have a bona fide representative.
So back to number 2, here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
So we don't even decide when right now, but if get an email. Okay. Thank you. Okay, go.
But that's it, I when you would ask that here, and that's not because you know, something you decide when it's adopted. So it's a little late, but April 2nd is Steve Connors coming in, and I think that I'll the warrant article for y'all for that. And then, people will just, there's been no, that, so I feel that we're in a very good place. I've asked all to read over it. April fund guidelines has been April months. And I'll, after we meet with town council on another adjustment, send it back to them for another review, but we're in a really good place.
Yeah, thank you, Vic, for all the work on it.
And I think we're gonna need to have an article, I think we just talked about it this afternoon, to amend the 25 budget in order to take that large item, a salary line item in the select board budget and send it out to all the appropriate departments, otherwise they're not gonna have good figures in it. So.
I like our budget lines.
So it's, so here we go again.
I would like to see the planning article not at any. Especially the amend the senior overlay.
Okay.
Because I think that one is going to be our golden goose for a while potentially, and we can make sure that we don't get people leaving and somebody calls a form and we can't hold them. So, where we want to put.
But we don't want to put it in the beginning either, because that will provoke a lot of discussion, so.
Yeah, I can fiddle with it a little bit, and maybe we could move them up and not see.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
I think that's why we always have it at the end, all the controversial stuff, so people will stay.
Right, well, that is sort of been, that's a whole
Point.
point. Nixon, is you put the juicy stuff at the end.
Keep it warm, yeah.
Yeah, we decide that. That's the last one. And we'll have a slide until the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Angry one.
It'll be fun.
Okay, I'll make those adjustments, and then again, this will just be an agenda item for y'all. Now until May 1st.
Right, all right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next land acquisition policy, so this is our second viewing, right? First.
This is the one that goes in combination with the one that you approved the last. It's a land donation and then. Land acquisition, so it's more of a purchase.
Yep, gotcha.
If this was your first read on this, it has been to the planning board, to a local surveyor that I know. Town treasurer and collector's office in conservation, it's also been reviewed by the. So. Just want to take a look at it, and back, just let me know, and have to adjust. Or make changes.
Anybody have any questions that are burning tonight they'd like to ask?
Well, on the last one, we had it modified it to say that some of these would be excused. Right, so
Some of the requirements, you mean?
yeah.
Right.
So with this one, we're acquiring one. There's the procurement laws that when you're acquiring, see there's a lot more NGL that's building in here. So you can ask town council if there's a particular development to road. But some of them are gonna be required.
We'll ask if there's any non-MGL related requirements that can be done, or that can be, you can allow leeway.
Right.
Put it back on for the next agenda.
Yep, that sounds good.
If there are any changes, get them to it before. Thank you.
Alrighty, item 7.4, the Committee for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, request for an appointment. So Elizabeth Fortuno has submitted an application to join the committee.
I read despite this student at Hopkins Academy. And I'm very impressed that this person wants to be on this committee.
Yes.
I highly recommend the motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Randy, seconded by Jane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. We're gonna pause now and ask, is there anybody here for public comment? Okay. Then old business, we have the town administrator project update report.
Yep, in the interest of time, I will give the high notes and anything that's changed. Classification and compensation, we did finally meet with the Collins Center last week for them to go over their report with us. We asked them to make a couple of adjustments to it to really kind of focus on the succession part of it. They're going to be making those changes, and then when that's done, we will have them in for a future agenda to discuss it with the board. The landfill municipal solar, I just wanted to remind everyone that the committee is overseeing that project. It is out of our hands at this point, and they will advise us when there are any other updates. So we just wait for that.
I will make one comment.
Yeah.
Which is that it turns out there's an alternative to lithium for solar storage batteries. Well, we're going to have a program on if we go. Whatever the third, second Tuesday is, we'd like to have it for their.
Who sales first?
Mhm.
Who sales first?
Yeah, and
That's telling
you're
you.
gotta
gotta
go.
come, you know?
Well, I don't remember, I'm sorry, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Oh, thank you for being honest. Jenny.
So Russell School reuse, they are still working on it. We've seen a draft. They're waiting for a couple of other estimates, and they will have that ready by at some point in April. Town hall HVAC, no change there. Levy rehab. We still have not heard back from USDA. I did apply for a grant through them. Woodard and Curran are going to be putting together some numbers for some next steps. We're going to be preparing an RFQ. I have already spoken with Senator Comerford, and we're going to be, as soon as we get something back from Woodard and Curran, we're going to be putting together a meeting with the senator and some of the other legislators we've been talking to. I also have a meeting this Friday with some individuals from another new potential grant opportunity. They are actually going to be coming out here to look at some of our dams, and we will get them up onto the levee as well to walk around. It's kind of step one of their grant process. Scott suggested that if we can get their eyes on it first ahead of time and kind of the extent of what we're looking for, we can then apply for a potential grant. There is unfortunately, they do both a planning and a construction grant, so they can do the planning phase of it, although Woodard and Curran has been working with us for a number of years on this, so I think we're pretty squared away in that department. And then the other half is construction. There is unfortunately going to be a 10% match from the town for whatever we can get. And for those of you who have seen the numbers, they're not small, but it's probably cheaper than having a river running through the center of so I'll have more. What's that? Yeah. Well, yeah, for some folks, it'll be great. So TA search, we selected the committee tonight. I have my email. I just got to make a couple adjustments and we'll send that out. Put the committee in touch with John tomorrow. Library roof, no changes there. Town council is still reviewing all the documents. And as far as the negotiations go, 2 or 3, some minor issues to handle. We are working on that, but we are essentially tentatively agreed with all of our unions. So next steps would be to really dive into each one of the unions and have each side ratified. They're going to be beginning to bring their union bodies, and then once we put all of the changes together, we will bring the ratifications to the select board for
for your meetings and executives at some point in the near future.
So Mike, to that end, does it make sense for us to have an executive session tonight or?
No, I was, unless, no, it does not, because I was simply gonna give you a very brief rundown of all of that. We've had real close to the full update. We went over it the last executive session more. For the update for you, I was simply gonna let you know that the heavy lifting is done. Big minor things left.
Is everybody okay with that? Or if you have specific questions?
Oh, gosh, I really wanted executive session.
Just for you, Jane, just for you.
Jane, there's a special motion you can make.
Okay. All right, anything else for our acting administrator? Okay. All right, any liaison reports or announcements this evening? No?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, so we're not going into executive session then.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, what?
Did you miss the whole conversation?
No,
Okay.
I was like,
You were all queued up to go.
I was all queued up. I was like, okay, I'm making motion to, no motion
I will
necessary.
second the motion.
I'll second that. Motion made by Randy, seconded in a tie. By David and Jane, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks, everybody. Good night.